Very happy to see you.
So I am record from now on. It's being recorded. So please.
So I'm so happy to have Anne with us here. And I think we need to give you a background on what we do and why we were trying to find you. And thank you for answering our call. Arik, yeah, sorry.
We cannot see you, Frederick.
Yeah, I'm going to do that later. Just allow me to start this way. Then I'm going to
sure.
Yeah, put my video on later. So Arik is in Israel. I'm in Kenya. Arik leads a group where we do fasting weekly. There is a weekly fasting that we do. So we have a WhatsApp group, and he's admin that group, and we also have a YouTube channel for that weekly fasting group. Then Frederick has also a group, that is me, and this is now called prolonged dry fasting. From the weekly fasting, the idea came that we should start a little days longer than once a week, and people wanted to engage in deeper discussions. So we started another group which we called prolonged dry fast. This means people can fast longer than 24 hours, and they encourage each other. They do all kind of things. But as we get into the journey of fasting, we realize that fasting, especially therapeutic, the ones for medical fasts, the ones that's to do with healing, to do with helping curing diseases and all that, also goes with diet. We realize that, okay, you can't just be eating everything that is junk outside there and you want to be well. You must, if you fast to get well and go back to your junk foods, again, the disease comes back again. So that's what we realize, okay, what type of food is compatible with fasting? The ones that will going to help us with fasting. And that's when we realize that, raw vegan, fruitarian, and that, and then we was like, no, we have to get people who have experienced more than us on this path, on this journey. And that's why we, I think it's about 3 weeks or more, or 4. We had one person here from Japan. It's called Eileen Magola. This person has been on fruits for 1 year, 1 full year. So he gave us his story, and it was so remarkable. Everybody was like, wow, this is good. We need to get in. Also, when I was trying to find out more about Fruitarian, I found your video, I think one, somewhere in, then I think a journalist from somewhere, I don't remember the name now, was interviewing you. And then I felt like, this is now the person that I need to find. But finding you was not easy. I can tell you it was not easy. So welcome so much, because I've realized that you also even have a book. You have written a book.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be interviewed by you today. Yeah, I've been on a fruitarian diet for 29 years, and it's, of all the diets I've ever tried, it's just the one that I've stuck with because it ticks all the boxes, ethically, environmentally, health-wise, spiritually, and emotionally. And I've just had very, very good health. I've raised 2 happy and healthy children on this diet, and yes, I have written a book, which, if you can see that, but Fruitarianism, The Path to Paradise, which I published in 2009, and I send out free PDF copies. So if anybody's interested in a free PDF copy, if they email me at fruitbatam@yahoo.com, then I'll send out a free copy, PDF copy, and that's FRUITBATANNE.
Allow me to write it. Allow me to write it on the chat. You said FRUITBATANNE
fruitanne@yahoo.com. So fruitbatanne@yahoo.com.
Okay.
And my contact details are also on my website, which is fruitgod.com. So you can contact me through there as well.
Fruit God, as in
Fruit God. Fruit and then God, fruitgod.com. So fruitgod.com has my contact details on as well.
Okay, I got that one. I think that one will going to help us. Very easy to find even your email on your contacts, because I didn't get the email very well. There's no problem. We are just going to. We have a group, and I think people are going to get will want to get that free PDF, and others will also need to maybe promote in one way or another. Will also to buy the hard copy. So we are going to let them know in our groups, and they are going to find how to get you. Otherwise. How did you start this journey? Maybe we start from there.
Yes, well, I guess the start of my journey came when I was 20 years old, so 34 years ago now. And I decided to become vegan purely for ethical reasons. I was no longer comfortable with many of the practices going on in the egg and the dairy industry. And I had no thoughts of health. I thought I was pretty healthy. I was 20 years old. I had no major health issues. And at the time I was at university in the UK in Canterbury, and every day I had to walk up a big hill to get to the campus. My student digs were at the bottom of the hill. And every day, by the time I got to the top of the hill, I was wheezy and out of breath and tight in my chest. And, I didn't really think much about it. But the very next day, after I gave up all dairy products and eggs, I was at the top of the hill, and suddenly I realized that I wasn't wheezing and I wasn't tight in the chest. And it was like a revelation. It was like, wow, I hadn't expected any health benefits with going vegan. But here, the very next day afterwards, and that's what really struck me, the very next day afterwards, and I never had that wheezing ever again, never had that tightness in the chest. So from that moment on, I was very inspired and interested to make that connection between what we put in our bodies and how we feel. And I tried different types of vegan diet. I tried an Anne Wigmore, sort of a lot of sprouts and wheatgrass, and I felt pretty good on it, but it was very time consuming. And, you had to rinse the sprouts every day. And also I got a little bit fed up with the beany taste of everything. I tried a Macrobotic vegan diet, and I did that for about 18 months. And again, I felt pretty good on it because I used all organic produce, but there was a lot of cooking involved, a lot of food prep, and I would maybe spend 4 or 5 hours a day preparing the 3 cooked meals a day. I tried a whole food vegan diet, and I didn't stick with any one of these for more than a year and a half. And then in 1990, I went to a talk at our local animal rights group. And the talk was by a guy called David Shelley. And this was in Leicester in the UK, in my hometown. And David was a fruitarian, and he was such a good advert for the diet. He had lots of energy, great skin, he cycled everywhere. And I realized that what he was doing was working very well for himself, and I wanted to try it. And so I tried, from that moment on, I started out on the Fruitarian diet. And at the time, I was pregnant with my eldest son. So I wanted to do a transition. So over the next year, I transitioned to a fruit diet. And really, I've never looked back. So that's how I got started on the fruit diet. And as I mentioned before, it just ticks all the boxes for me, environmentally, ethically, health-wise, spiritually. It's just on every level. And also, since that point, everything that I've read and researched has led me to believe that we are frugivores by design. There's nothing I have read or researched that has led me to believe that we are anything else, and that the frugivore diet works so well because that's what we are designed to eat. So that's really how I got started on the fruit diet. And, I've stuck with it, and it's stuck with me, and it's brought me many, many benefits over the years. Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, when you are just 20 years old, And
I was 20 when I became vegan, and
yeah.
in the 4 years after that, I tried different types of vegan diet. Then when I was 24, I met a guy called David Shelley, and from that moment on, transitioned over the next year. So by the time I was 25, I was on a fruitarian diet, and I've been on the diet ever since. Yeah.
Wow. It's like a, a struggle in my mind. Some people respond because sometimes we give, like when I got a response from that last time I had Alan Bola, the one I told you at 1 year Fruitarian. Some people responded down there, the video. They were like, I think I got one person, not many, one that was saying, I tried this thing and it just almost killed me. so I can't do it again. It's like, others are like, no, this is not the right way. You're going to miss things like B12. I don't know, you're going to have what deficiencies. So I get that challenge, which I didn't know was existing before. I mean, I just thought it was just okay to be a fruitarian. It was just okay. I've just tried to, I've not yet fully transitioned, but I'm feeling that this is the path that all of us need to be in. So the risks involved. But then the thing that I'm thinking of, could it be that age also matters when somebody wants to start this kind of lifestyle?
I think it more depends on the lifestyle that the person's lived previously, their level of health. You can be quite an older person, but have a good level of health and vitality, and you can take to the diet very well. You can be a younger person and have many health issues. And I'd just like to mention 3 things that I think are very important for thriving on this diet. And it's not just about surviving on the diet, it's about thriving on the diet. So the 3 things, the first one is to be ready for the diet. And that's not just physically ready, it's mentally, emotionally, and spiritually ready for the diet. And people like Arnold Ehret and Essie Honorable, who were pioneers in the Fruitarian movement, both recommended transitional diets or transitional periods as being very effective for most people. Some people do go straight onto a fruit diet if they've got severe health challenges and they really need to have 100% raw vegan diet. But for many people, that transitional period is very, very helpful. And during the transitional period, you can see what works for you and what doesn't. And we are all individuals with individual needs. And I think something that is very important is just because something works for one person, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for another person. The other person may need a longer transitional period. They may need more greens. They may need more fatty foods. So we really need to tailor this diet to our individual needs, and a transitional diet can show us what works for us. And that's not static. What works for us one year, we may need to tailor the next year. We may need more greens, or we may need more fatty foods. It just depends where we are in our journey. So a transitional diet whereby we eat more and more fruit and vegetables if we're eating vegetables, and less cooked food, can be useful. And certainly for me, during my transitional period, I'd go for maybe 2 or 3 months just on fruits, on simple mono meals of fruit. And then I might have a small amount of cooked food, and it wouldn't be anything complex. It might just be a baked sweet potato or a baked Irish potato in the evening. But what I found was if I had cooked food for more than 2 days in a row, my body odor would change. I wouldn't feel as good in the morning. When I got up in the morning, the taste in my mouth would change. And so I knew for me that 100% raw fruit diet was the most optimal diet. And that transitional period helped me to realize that, because when I went back to having some cooked food, I didn't feel as good. But other people have 80% raw, 20% cooked, and they find that works very well for them. So it's finding what works for you. So the first point, be ready for the diet. Be ready physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The second way that I think is really important to thrive on the diet is to be able to access really good quality fruits. And this is so important, nowadays more than ever, because our soils, especially in Australia, in Europe, are getting degraded. And I went to a talk in 2011, so 10 years ago, by an Australian guy who was very much into permaculture. Costa Georgiadis is his name. And he said we may need to eat 4 times the amount of produce as we did in the 1970s to get the same amount of nutrients. And when he's talking about nutrients, it's not so much macronutrients, which are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, because as long as we're eating enough for our needs, it's pretty easy to get our macronutrient levels met. But it's the micronutrients where we may have issues. And micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. So with the degradation of the soil, we are not getting those minerals in the soil that we need. And it's very, very important to have a good natural soil with lots of microorganisms in it, such as fungi and bacteria. And without those microorganisms, we don't get the minerals in our food. And the reason for that is there is a symbiotic relationship between fungi in the soil and fruit plants. And what happens is fruit plants cannot absorb inorganic minerals in many cases. So something like calcium phosphate, the fruit tree or the fruit plant cannot get that calcium from the calcium phosphate unless the bond is broken down, the chemical bond, which then releases the calcium. So the fungi in the soil, which live near the tree roots, what they do is they can break down that bond. So they break down the bond. And when they break down the bond, the calcium is then able to be assimilated by the fruit plant. And in return, because it's a symbiotic relationship, which means that both parties benefit, the plant, the fruit plant, can photosynthesize. So that can produce carbohydrate. And so it shares some of its carbohydrate with the fungi because the fungi doesn't have leaves and it can't photosynthesize, it can't produce carbohydrates. So when we have non-organic foods, when we put chemicals in the soil, one of the things those chemicals do is to kill the microorganisms. So in order to get the micronutrients in our food, we need microorganisms in the soil. And when we put pesticides, herbicides, fungicides into that soil, it kills the microorganisms. And that's one very important reason why, if at all possible, we eat wild, foraged, but be careful when you're foraging, make sure that you know what you're eating, you don't eat anything poisonous. Biodynamic, organic, non-sprayed, local, homegrown fruits are so important because even if we put minerals into the soil, if we don't have the fungi, those minerals won't get absorbed by the fruit plants. And one example was in Australia, in northern New South Wales, and there was an avocado farmer, and he was putting 15 tons of calcium carbonate or lime into his soil, but none of it was being assimilated by the fruit trees because the microorganisms weren't in the soil. So even though he put a lot of calcium in his soil, it wasn't until he inoculated the soil with fungi and the fungi started to grow that he actually got good calcium levels in his fruit, in his avocados. So that's the second thing, is that we really need good quality fruit to thrive on this diet, not just to survive. And that's one thing that I think is very, very important. And I would encourage anybody to get the best possible quality produce that you can. It's so very, very important, and especially fruit that is grown without chemicals, because when the microorganisms are destroyed in the soil, we don't get the micronutrients, the vital vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that we need. We don't get them in the fruit. And the third point that I would say is very, very important is to have faith in this diet. And by faith, I don't mean blind faith. I don't mean me saying, right, I'm going to be a fruitarian now, and I'm going to be on the fruitarian diet for the next 30 years, and everything's going to be fine. I mean a faith that has its foundation in knowledge, research, networking, sharing with other people. And ever since I started out on this path, I have researched about this diet. I have read many, many books, many scientific papers, because it needs the science to back it up. And I have found that the science does back it up. So studying physiology, anatomy, chemistry, biology, dietetics, and all these studies that I have read back up the fact that we have the anatomy of a frugivore in our teeth, in our digestive system, in our color stereoscopic vision. In many, many ways, we have the anatomy of a frugivore. And we are also able to digest and assimilate fruit very well, and also get what we need from fruit. So having faith in the diet is really, really important. And I also think that this is mirrored back to us. So for example, if we're not feeling sure about the diet, if we're thinking, I can't get this, it can't be healthy, it's not the diet for me, it's not the diet for my children, I'm unsure, that tells me that we need to do more research. We need to look into the diet further. And if we're feeling that, people will pick up on that. You know, they will question us. But I've had very little opposition socially, from friends, from family, because not only have they seen how healthy my children are on this diet, but also I have a faith in it, but not a blind faith. So I think that's very, very important. So those 3 points: to be ready for the diet emotionally, physically, mentally, to access really good quality fruit that's grown with love and care in good soil and is properly ripe, and to have faith in the diet. And you also mentioned B12. And it's interesting with B12 because some people I know have been on a fruit diet for over 20 years. They have never supplemented and they've never had any symptoms of B12 deficiency. I've known other people that have done the diet for 18 months and have become severely B12 deficient. So what I would suggest is to get your levels checked. Get your levels checked, and if they're low, or if you have any symptoms of B12 deficiency, then take a supplement, a good vegan supplement, because you can get issues if you don't have enough. And it's not just about getting enough dietary B12, because B12 is produced by bacteria, so it's often on the skins of organically grown fruit. When we eat a lot of supermarket fruit, when we have overly sterilized lives, when we use antibacterial mouthwash or antibacterial this and that in our environment, it kills the good bacteria as well as the bad bacteria. So it kills the bacteria that produce B12. So definitely I would recommend getting your levels checked. I've only supplemented very rarely when I was pregnant, when I was breastfeeding, because it was very important to me that my growing baby didn't get B12 deficient. But most of the time of those 29 years that I've been on a fruit diet, I haven't supplemented. My B12 levels are normal, in the normal range, but on the low side of normal. I've had no B12 deficiencies, and deficiencies are brain fog, numbness in the fingers and toes, tingling on the tongue. They're quite distinct deficiency symptoms. If I did have any deficiency symptoms or my levels were really low, I would supplement. I don't have an issue with supplementing, but as I said, some people can maintain adequate B12 levels without supplementing. Another thing is vitamin D. If you live in a colder climate, if you can't access good quality sunshine all year round, and you can store both these vitamins. You can store B12, you can store vitamin D as well. So you can store some for the winter months, but if you can't get enough storage of vitamin D, then again, you can supplement. You can take a good quality vegan supplement, and I would recommend getting your vitamin D levels checked if you're on a raw fruit diet, and even if you're on a vegan diet. Because if you're living in a colder climate where there are longer winters and the sun is not as strong, you may get vitamin D deficient. So it's very, very important. So those two, they'd be the only things that I would suggest supplementing if you need to. Everything else you can easily get from your diet. And it's always a better way to get your micronutrient needs met from your diet, because the whole mineral balance, the mineral and vitamin balance in our body is very, very specialized. So if we take too much of one type of mineral, we can cause deficiencies in another. So it's really important not to just massively supplement magnesium or copper or calcium, because that will put other minerals out of balance. So the best way is to get really good quality produce, in my opinion, and also get your vitamin D levels checked and B12 if you're worried about those, and supplement if you need to.
What do you mean by store this vitamin D?
Yes, you can store the water-soluble vitamins, such as a lot of the B vitamins and vitamin C, cannot be stored in the body. You excrete them through your urine. But the fat-soluble vitamins, such as vitamin E, vitamin D, and B12, can be stored. They can be stored in the liver, they can be stored in the body. So you can actually store those vitamins and release them as you need them. So I think B12 can be stored for up to 6 years, and vitamin D can be stored for several months. So you can store the fat-soluble vitamins will store in the body, but they will run out eventually. So if you're concerned about your B12 levels or your vitamin D levels, I would just go and get your blood checked just to ensure that your levels are not low, because they're both very, very important. Deficiency of B12 can cause serious neurological issues, and a lack of vitamin D can cause issues with bones and teeth, and also it really impacts on the immune system. So if you're insufficient in vitamin D, you can be more susceptible to viruses and bacterial infections.
Okay, I got you. So it means if I take it now, let me say getting the supplement today, I can go as I'm waiting for the next season. Maybe the season of we don't have so much the cold season area where I stay, but we have people here who are coming from Europe and other places that are very cold, like maybe Canada or other places. So you find that after maybe I take it now and the season in between now and the cold season is maybe 3 months to come, I'm still okay, I'm safe, it's still going to be in my body. That's what you mean, I think.
Well, it depends how much you absorb. It depends how much vitamin D you absorb, how much vitamin B12 you've got in your stores, and that will vary from person to person, how much sun you've been exposed to. So it's a good idea just to get your levels checked. If you've got very high levels, and get them checked in the winter. If they're dropping rapidly, you might want to consider supplementing. If your vitamin D levels are high, I live in Australia, so I don't have an issue with getting enough vitamin D all year round. But if I was living in a colder place, if I was back living in the UK and I wasn't going away, when I did live in the UK, I would go away for 2 months a year in the colder season to somewhere sunny to, and that would really help with vitamin D levels. But if I was living in the UK or Canada, and I wasn't going away for a period of time during the colder months, yes, I would supplement, or I would get a sun lamp. You can get lamps which produce vitamin D. So you can, you can sit in front of them for an hour a day or half an hour a day, and then you can produce vitamin D that way if you prefer not to supplement. So that, it's either supplements or you can get a vitamin D producing lamp to create vitamin D in your body.
Oh, thank you. That's now very, very clear. There is something that is pressing me. Maybe we just change to this other side of sickness and the fruitarian diet, or fruitivore. I don't know, I don't know how to call a name. So how do you have experiences with some maybe specific conditions that maybe within this 29 years you have had maybe some kind of illness or chronic diseases or just some little kind of health issues or challenges there?
I've actually been pretty healthy during the 29 years on the fruit diet. I haven't really got terribly sick. I did get tropical ulcers once, but they cleared up pretty quickly. But what I think is that it's not the food that heals you, really. It's your body. It's your body that heals. If you look at the natural hygiene philosophy, it's the body that heals itself if the conditions are right. So diet is one part of that, and a very, very important part. And when natural hygiene was starting, which was like about 150 years ago, they were looking at these conditions for healing of the body. Because even if you live a very unhealthy life, even if you eat junk food and you smoke and you drink, if you get sick, your body will still try and heal, but it will just be thwarted. Like some people that have ulcers, and the ulcers last for years and years because the body's trying to heal, but what the person is doing is working against the body. So the natural hygienists were looking at what conditions the body needed to be able to heal effectively. And they looked at, we need fresh air, we need a good water supply, we need appropriate level of exercise, we need adequate sleep, and we need a natural diet. Which brings up this whole question of, well, what is a natural diet? And a natural diet has got to be a diet that we find appealing in its raw mono state. And what food do we find appealing without being cut up, without being cooked, without being frozen, without being mixed? You think of a ripe mango hanging on a tree, or a ripe peach. You need to do nothing to that. You just have to pick it and eat it. So it fits that criterion. Another criterion is that it's got to be a food that we can digest well, that our bodies will work with. And as I was saying before, the whole anatomy of our bodies is that of a frugivore. Our dental formula, our colour stereoscopic vision, the way our hands work, the length of our digestive tract. So yes, not only do we find the food appealing, we can digest it and assimilate it well. And the third thing is that it needs to be able to supply our body with the nutrients it needs. And many researchers 150, 100 years ago were looking very specifically at diets and anatomy and came to the conclusion that yes, we are designed to eat a fruit diet. So I think when we are on our natural path, and you've mentioned fasting, and fasting can be a really good way to fast track us, to help clear our system, to reset our gut bacteria, so that when we've done our fasting, when we've cleaned out, then we will heal from whatever illnesses we get. And when we support that with an appropriate diet, then we're less likely to get ill and sick. And my immune system has been pretty good. I've lived with people that have had viruses and I haven't got the virus. I've obviously come into contact with it, but I've not developed it. And I truly believe, especially when I'm on an extended mono diet, and I recently did a 40-day orange juice mono diet for Lent, which finished on Palm Sunday and started on the 17th of February, that I can come into contact with people that are sick, but I won't get that. So we build a good immune system for ourselves when we fast, when we look after our body, when we have a positive attitude, when we have adequate rest, appropriate level of exercise, and a good diet, all those things combined. And so that we are less likely to get any sickness. And if we injure ourselves, if we have a wound, or if we break anything, and touch wood, I haven't ever had a broken bone, but if I have a wound, if I cut myself or bruise, and I don't bruise very much at all on a fruit diet, then it heals very, very quickly. And this is something I've noticed. If I cut myself, it will heal much quicker than if I cut myself before I was on a fruit diet. So for myself, my health has been really good. I've not really had any serious health challenges. And if I come into contact with viruses, I tend to avoid them. And if I do get something, it'll be over in a couple of days usually. So I have great faith that our natural diet will aid us in avoiding illness. And if we get injured, then we will heal very, very quickly. So yeah, I've had really good health, and my children similarly, brought up on fruit diets, have had very good health. Neither of them were vaccinated, but neither of them had any of the childhood illnesses. They didn't have measles, mumps, chickenpox, German measles. They were very, very healthy. And again, it's that immune system working very well to protect the body against invasion by bacteria or viruses or anything harmful. And diet in combination with exercise, good water, deep breathing, positive mental attitude is our best defense against anything. And I think especially in these times when people are very concerned about viruses, the very best thing we can do is to have a natural diet, we can fast, we can practice the other important aspects of natural hygiene, and that will protect us and give us a happy life. And I don't really care how long I live. Some people think that you're doing a fruit diet so you live longer. Not necessarily. I don't care how long I live, as long as each day that I am alive, I bounce out of bed in the morning and I have really good, full, wonderful health. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
That's right. You answered my question very quickly. And the other thing, maybe you can give us some. We have talked about the juice fast. Was it on orange? You said orange or
Orange
for 40
juice,
days?
yeah.
Okay.
For 40
I got you.
days for Lent, yes.
Okay,
Which
I
I
got you.
started on the 17th of February and finished on Palm Sunday, because the traditional period of Lent finishes on Easter Sunday, but they take Sundays off. And I didn't take Sundays off. I fasted every day. So the 40-day period finishes on Palm Sunday, which is the Sunday just before Easter.
Okay. Oh, do you have, maybe let's say, how do you balance? We talk about balancing your fruits intake. Something like, do you have favorite fruits that you maybe, or do you have a season you just take this specific type of fruits? Because there was that idea of there are fruits that are seasonal fruits, so we go with the nature. That's Alan was telling us last, I think, something like balancing with the nature, going with the nature. This is how Frederick is a person talking to you. Yeah. So do you have something like balancing them, or how do you do, or you just go? Can you get that area? I hope you're getting my question. If you're not getting, I need to explain.
Yes. Well, for me, it's important to eat seasonally. So it's important to eat fruits that are grown locally, if possible. If you live in the UK or in Northern Europe, you can't always eat locally all year round. So then it's good to get into an organic buying group where you can get good quality imported fruits. Fortunately, Australia has an amazing climate. It has a good range of climates, from Mediterranean to subtropical to true tropical. So you can get really good fruit all year round. And where I am in the subtropics, I can get good fruit all year round. So I do eat locally, but a staple for me is oranges, which I juice with a hand juicer. So I leave most of the fiber in the orange juice. So I would say that I have orange juice most days, and that's a kind of staple for me. I think orange juice, I only really use organic oranges or biodynamic or non-sprayed. Good quality oranges that are picked ripe, so they're not too acidic. So they've got a better pH. If you get unripe oranges, they will tend to be more acidic and can be damaging to the teeth and are harder to digest. And then I will eat seasonal fruit. So what is local? What is good quality? I think variety of fruit over the course of a year is important. To me, I like to do 1 or 2 mono diets, extended mono diets a year. And I think for me, that is like a car going to the garage for a service. It just tunes me up. People say, well, why do you still do mono diets when you've been on a fruit diet for 29 years? But I live in a country area that are chemical sprays in the area I live. There's environmental pollution, there's vehicle pollution, there's stress, there's electromagnetic pollution, dirty electricity, all those things that I have not really much control over. So I think for me, doing a couple of mono diets a year really tunes it up and really has been important for me in thriving on this diet. But over the course of a year, variety is important. It's also important, I believe, to eat food grown in different locations. If you eat all your fruit from one area, that soil may be deficient in copper. It may be deficient in selenium. It may be deficient in copper, magnesium. But if we eat from different areas, we're more likely to get a wider balance of nutrients, because it's the micronutrients. When we talk about what we need in our diet, I really think that if you're eating a big enough quantity of fruit, then you will get your macro needs met. You will get enough carbs, you'll get enough fats, you'll get enough protein if you're eating enough in terms of calories. But where we are challenged, it's the micronutrients. So really going for good quality fruits and a variety of fruits grown in different areas, and eating with the seasons if possible. And even in Europe, Northern Europe, where you don't get so much local fruit, you can get the Southern European fruits for a good portion of the year. They might come in round about now, the cherries might start, and go right down to October or November with the melons and the grapes. And you can also store apples and pears for many months if you're living in a colder climate. So if this diet is important enough to you, if you really want to make it work, you will. And the bottom line for me to ensure that you get a balanced diet is the quality of the fruit. It's better getting a smaller range of really good quality fruits than eating a lot of fruit, different varieties, if the quality is not so good. And the quality comes down to soil and it comes down to ripeness. So I think long term, obviously, we do need to have a balanced diet, because if we're not getting our micronutrient needs met, which is vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, we'll get sick and we won't thrive on the diet, and our immune system won't be good. And things that you can look at to see if the diet is working for you is your skin, your teeth, your hair, how quick you heal after you've injured yourself. Do you bruise easily? I used to bruise so easily when I was a child. I always had bruises right up and down my legs. And even before I went on a raw diet, I would bruise very, very easily. But now, especially when I include a good amount of citrus fruits, it's very, very rare that I bruise. And that's another indication that I've got, my circulatory system is working well, and that, I'm not, my capillaries aren't easily damaged as they used to be. So good quality fruit for me, and a couple of mono diets during the year, but the rest of the year getting more of a variety. And that's how I find, for me, that I balance a fruitarian diet and thrive and feel very healthy on a fruitarian diet.
Thank you. And as we are talking, you're getting other things that we didn't expect. So questions are coming from what we did not, I did not plan. Like now you have said about your children not getting vaccinations. They were not vaccinated at all, and they didn't get those diseases even later. And then it comes to moments like, okay, so maybe that is the right track, the right thing that we should be doing. But we are not saying Anne's journey or your journey is everybody else's journey, because you have given us a very clear, very universal way where somebody has to adapt and has to go. The transition has to be a little a process. It's not just something that is drastic or not. But then I want us to focus on a little something about mental clarity, about your maybe you can test this one with the performance of your children when they were in school. Did it affect them or it was to their advantage in that learning environment? They have good memory. Are they very creative? Are they on the sports side? Or are they very active? Something like that. I think the children part will be much better. Will be easier to get that if you're.
Yes, I mean, my children were very healthy and happy, very active, but not hyperactive. They weren't sick. They didn't get any of these illnesses. And it was a joy. It was a joy bringing them up, because they weren't hyperactive. They were very, very well behaved children. And it's not just the diet. I think something that's very, very important with bringing children up is something known as attachment parenting, or the continuum concept, where that you are always there for your children when they're very, very small. You don't leave your babies to cry. You attend to their needs so they grow up with this inner security, feeling very happy and loved. And then when they get a little bit older, they become very independent. And both my children who had this attachment parenting, when they were 4 or 5, they became very, very independent. Another thing that's very important, I think, with children is long-term breastfeeding. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration if you want to bring up your children on like a fruit diet, because when children are born, they're not fruitarians, they're milkarians, and they need milk. I believe that children need milk for about 3.5 to 4 years. So are you prepared to breastfeed that long? And it's not something that's very common in our society, because most people feed their children cow's milk, or if they're vegan, they might feed them almond milk or soya milk. But if you're on a raw vegan diet, your child still needs milk. And I think for children to thrive, they need to be long-term breastfed, and then when they're weaned, to have really good quality fruits. And my children were very alert, creative, active. I could take them anywhere. Often when you have a toddler and you go into a shop, you see the shop assistants looking at you like, oh no, there's a toddler, there's a little child, it's going to run amok in this shop. But my children would just sit there. And I remember once I was looking at scarves. I was dressing up and I needed a costume and I needed a scarf. And I was in this shop and I saw the woman look at me when I came in, because my younger son was about 2.5, 3 years old. I saw that look, oh no, it's a young child in the shop, there's going to be mayhem. And I was ages choosing this scarf. And my son just sat there and the woman was looking at him. And as I left the shop, she said, your son is so well behaved. He's one of the best behaved children I've ever seen. And it wasn't that he didn't have energy. When he was at home, he was always active in the garden, bouncing around, jumping on the trampoline, running up and down. But I knew that if I took my children anywhere, they wouldn't have a frantic kind of hyperactivity and they would be very well behaved. And another time I went to do a talk on Fruitarianism, and it was at a meeting that went on for about 4 hours. And at the end of the meeting, a man came over to me and he said, I'm impressed by the Fruitarian diet. I did like your talk, but what impressed me more was the behaviour of your son. And at that point, he was about 4 or 5, and he sat on a chair for 4 hours, which most children of 4 or 5 wouldn't sit on a chair listening to adults talk for 4 or 5 hours. So for me, it's been a beautiful experience bringing up children on this diet, because they're well behaved, they're happy, they're healthy, they're not sick. And it is full on. Looking after children is a full on job, no doubt about that, but it was a very beautiful job. And one of the best things about the fruit diet for me is the beautiful times that I've had with my children. It's been lovely.
I just have so many questions. They are coming. As you talk, they are coming. Now, I don't know how I'm going to frame this, but I've gotten your point. It's clear that the behavior and behavior of the children, they become a little calm and very, how do you call this? They're not very aggressive. They're very obedient. They are and humble. They're very, I get that. Yeah. But how did you transition them from milk to the fruits? How that transition, that point?
Well, each child is different. So each child will be ready to try fruits at a different time. Like my eldest son, at 7 months old, he still wasn't interested. I could be eating any kind of delicious fruit and he wouldn't take an interest in it. My younger son, 3 months old, he was trying to reach out and grab the fruit that I was eating, but I thought he was a little young. So around about 6, 7 months, I started to introduce food to my children, and it would be a small amount. They would still get the majority of their calories from milk, but it would be fruits like custard apple, mashed. Make sure there's no skin or seeds on it. Avocado, really good food for babies. Bananas, and of course all organic foods. I didn't want to introduce any chemicals into my children's bodies, so organic seasonal fruits that were soft, easy to digest. Mangoes, persimmon, what was seasonal, black sapote. The sapotes are a very good food for children. And something else that I've noticed that most children love is the durian fruit, which is that spiky, strong smelling Southeast Asian fruit. Both my children went crazy for durian. They love durian, and it's a very nutritious fruit because it's got a good amount of fat in it. It's got a lot of micronutrients in it, and it's really delicious. Jackfruit's another good food for children, because I think children are growing, so they have different nutritional needs to adults. They need denser foods, I think, in some way. So avocados, bananas, figs. Figs are an excellent food. Berries, very high in micronutrients. So yes, just gradually introducing the fruit, and then they will eat more fruit and have less milk until it comes to the point where they self-weaned, where they were done with milk and then they were on a fruit diet. And when they gave up the milk, they needed more fruit because they weren't getting those nutrients from the milk. So their appetite would increase and they would have a higher volume of fruits. but really just ensuring that I always had really good quality fruits available in the home, and my children would just be free to eat as much as they wanted, because a child that's brought up on a natural diet and isn't forced to finish everything on their plate, I think eats very instinctively, and they finish when they've had enough. They will leave one grape on a bunch of grapes if they've had enough. They won't feel the need just to finish it just because it's there. So I noticed that with my children, there was an instinctive stop point when they finished eating, and they would always eat when they were hungry. And if they weren't hungry, they wouldn't eat. And there was no pressure to make them eat. And they both developed, very well into strong adults.
Okay, got you. And this is one that I needed a lady to ask, but let me just ask. During the times of the normal menstrual cycle, some people have problems with cramps, people have pains on the abdomen or what, and then some have too prolonged. It takes them something that should take 4 days, goes even weeks. As Frugivo, now I got the word Frugivo. Yeah. Did you have experiences like that? How were your experiences during those periods?
Well, certainly before I went on a raw food, fruit-based diet, I had long, painful periods with big cramps, and they weren't very comfortable. But after adopting a fruit-based diet, my menstrual cycle changed very much, and my periods were much lighter. They weren't painful. They weren't a problem. So yes, I did experience much better menstrual cycles. I'm kind of at the age now where I guess I'm coming into menopause. I still do have a cycle, but what I expect and what I have heard from other women my age that come into menopause is that they don't get any of these issues with hot flushes, with emotional ups and downs, and hormonal imbalances. So I think as well, during the period of your life when you have a cycle, the cycle is better, it's lighter. Some women even report that their periods, they actually stop bleeding altogether, but they still ovulating. I had very, very heavy periods, and so my periods got a lot lighter, but they never stopped completely. And what was interesting as well, even when I was doing mono diets, even when my weight and my body fat went quite low, I still kept my menstrual cycle. Apart from the times when I was pregnant, I always had a regular menstrual cycle. And I expect going into menopause in the next few years that I won't have a lot of the issues that many people do, because it's all about your endocrine system. We have many bodily systems, and the menstrual cycle and menopause are controlled by our endocrine or our hormonal system. And when we're on a natural diet and lifestyle, and it's not just diet, it's other aspects as well, such as exercise, fresh air, deep breathing, mental attitude, then our endocrine or our hormonal system becomes very, very balanced. And so for women, we get a good menstrual cycle and we have a very trouble-free menopause. And for men, they don't get prostate issues, and they don't, get this kind of midlife. A lot of men, they get to this midlife point and they start to put on a lot of belly fat or body fat, and they slow down and their muscle turns to fat. But if you maintain a good diet and lifestyle, and I've known men in their 60s and 70s on fruit-based diets, and they've been very fit and active and have as much energy as a lot of men in their 20s. So I think for men and women, being on a natural diet and lifestyle, it really helps with our endocrine system, and we don't get a lot of the issues that people who have an imbalanced endocrine system get.
And it also means, especially aside of men, I really did want to get one who will tell me the truth here. The sexual vitality. It also means that the person will be fully in strength. It's not going to be like waning, getting some ages, erectile dysfunctional problems or all issues. I think I'm trying to assume so. I'm trying to assume so.
Yes, and I think that's true. And I've helped people. I've helped men who've had issues with, you know, the male sexuality, and issues as men get older. They have issues with their prostate or with erectile dysfunction, and they say a man is as young as his arteries. And what you'll often find, if a man has problems in that area, he might also be at risk for heart disease, because it's all our venous system, it's all our circulatory system. So if the veins aren't working so well in one area, they're likely to be clogged in another area. And if you eat a diet that is high in fruit, and you know, it's especially watermelon. Yellow watermelon has something in it which is very, very helpful for men in particular. If you eat natural foods and you exercise and you do all the other things as well, there's no reason why your vitality in any area should go down, and that you can't keep active and healthy in every aspect of your life. And I truly believe that. I think people often say, I'm getting aches and pains, I'm getting female troubles, you know, my man's getting prostate troubles, and it's because I'm getting older. But it doesn't have to be that way. One good indicator is, how do you feel the very first thing in the morning? And do you bounce out of bed? Do you feel healthy and ready to start the day at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning? Because you're eating well and you've had adequate rest and appropriate level of exercise. And that for me is a barometer of our health. I mean, there might be the odd day where you've had a late night, or you've had some issues going on, but in general, how do you feel the very first thing in the morning? Do you need a cold shower to get you going? Do you need a cup of coffee? Or can you just get out of bed and feel free and all the energy's flowing? And for me, the fruit diet gives me that. And that's what I love about it. I am getting old. Of course, we all get old. We all age. But to age and to have energy and vitality and not have any aches and pains, to be totally free of aches and pains. And sometimes when I'm running, and I run about 5 miles every other day, when I'm running, my body's in flow, and I think I haven't got any aches, I haven't got any pains, there's nothing that I can complain about. That for me is an indication that what I'm doing is working well for me. And it might not be the way for everybody. Everybody has to find what works well for them, try things, and find what works for them and their individual needs. And I would never say everybody has to do that, but find what works for you. Find what works for you, so as you get older, you can still be as healthy and happy as you were, you know, when you're in your 20s or 30s. And there's no reason why we can't be. Yes, we age. You can't hold back aging, but you can hold back a lot of the aches and pains and illnesses associated with old age if we give our body what it needs and we don't gum it up with inappropriate foods and stimulants and wear it out through not looking after it properly.
Thank you. How about your when you are running? Talked about 5 miles run, and actually I wanted us to focus on that also, about the exercising. How you do the exercise? Just normal exercise like everybody else, but the sweating part. Do you excessively sweat, or you just a little like that, and everything's going on? And also your sleep. Uh, how long do you sleep? You feel like do you sleep just like normal people? They want to talk about 8 hours sleep, or that area also. Maybe you can get the two of them.
Yeah, well, I don't sweat excessively. And often as well, when you don't eat added sodium chloride in your diet, your sweat is not very, very salty, because we get rid of excess sodium chloride or salt through sweating. So you probably find that I don't sweat very much. I will sweat. I live in the subtropics, so sometimes I'll sweat, but not excessively. And I remember at one point I was in a sauna when I was on an orange juice mono diet, and I realized that I wasn't sweating. I was sitting in a sauna looking at the other people. So I think sometimes when my body fat goes a bit lower and when I'm on a mono orange juice diet, I sweat even less, very, very little, even in a hot environment. So I think sweating is often it's a way that the body gets rid of certain toxins through the sweat. If you eat a lot of added sodium, which I wouldn't recommend, you might find that you have more sweat and your sweat is very, very salty, or it smells. That's another thing, that your sweat doesn't have an offensive odor that I've noticed. It's very different. Your body odor is different on a fruit-based diet to me. And in terms of sleeping, I would probably get 6 hours in the summer, and I need more in the winter, 7 hours in the winter, and that's plenty for me. If I sleep longer than that, I don't feel as good. And I think so much energy is used in digestion. So the biggest use of energy in the body is digestion for a lot of people. So if we eat heavy, complex, mixed foods, we will probably need to sleep more. I also generally do intermittent fasting, where I only eat between 8 a.m. in the morning and 2 p.m. at night. And that also means that when you go to bed, you haven't got anything hardly in your digestive system. And so you are sleeping less because you're not needing this energy to work on digestion while you sleep. And also it gives very good quality sleep. So I really, for me, not for everybody, I know it doesn't work for everyone, but for me, intermittent fasting adds another level to being on a fruit diet. But yeah, I find that 6 hours in the summer, 7 in the winter is perfectly adequate for me. And I have a busy day. I'll go to bed early. Maybe I'll go to bed, by 9 o'clock, be up about 4 o'clock, sometimes even earlier, and be ready to go do some work, then go for a run, come back, do some more work. And I've always got plenty of energy. So, I'm up at 4 usually, in bed by 9ish, sometimes 10, depending. And yeah, have plenty of energy, good quality sleep, nice dreams, and just when I wake up, I'm ready to go. I don't need anything. I can wake up at 4 and I'm out of bed, which I like. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about this diet. With all the other things, it's not just diet. You've got to get all the bits. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle, and diet is a big piece of the jigsaw puzzle, but there's other pieces as well. And if you haven't got all the bits, it's not going to hold together so well. So, yeah.
Wow. I'm just enjoying everything. Wow, 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 wow. So you have even handled another thing altogether, the issues of um, let's say insomnia and maybe because some people have big problem with breathing. You may think there's something vibrating in the room because of those cloggings of the yeah. So I think you have answered me. You have answered me, and I'm really happy. Though I'm really impressed with what the information you are voluntarily giving us. But then there was this point of where uh, you your fasting lifestyle, because now we have brought two already. You have talked about intermittent fasting. You've talked about the juice fast that took 40 days. Do you have any other type of fast that you do apart from these two, or maybe yeah?
I occasionally do water fasting. The longest I've done is 2 weeks, and mainly because I've always had children to look after since I kind of started this diet. And so I always thought long extended water fasts wouldn't be appropriate for me because I wouldn't be able to just lie down all day. I'd have to work and also look after kids. And this is where I think juice fasting can be very useful, or a mono diet of fruit, because you can get good results. You're cleansing, you're healing your body, but you also have lots of energy. So when I did my 40-day orange juice diet, for example, I still ran every other day. I still worked full time. I still looked after my household. I still did gardening. Wasn't lying down. Whereas if I'd done a 40-day water fast, I'd probably have to lie down and do a lot of resting. So I do water fast, but maybe only 3 or 4 days occasionally, because normally I'm quite busy. And so for me, doing a juice fast, doing an orange juice fast, or another type of mono diet, maybe an apple mono diet, or a papaya, or a melon mono diet as well. That can give me some cleansing, but also it maintains my energy. But I do think water fasting is very valuable for many people. But for me, I don't do it so often. The longest I've done is 14 days, but I was active during those 14 days. I didn't lie down. I was still doing some work and looking after my son. But yeah, maybe in the future when I have less responsibilities, I would consider doing a longer water fast. But for me, the mono diets have been a really excellent way of healing and rebalancing while still maintaining my energy. And another thing about going on a mono diet as opposed to a water fast is that Arnold Ehret said, when we fast, we are on God's operating table, which is very true, because we don't really know how much physical detox we're going to do and how much emotional detox. And we can't really control that when we water fast. And that's why it's often good to do supervised long-term water fasting, because we don't really know what we're going to go through in terms of elimination. But when we do a mono diet, we are more in control, because if we want to speed up the elimination, if we've got an acute health issue that we want to deal with, and we have very small amounts of fruit, so say between 1 and 4 pounds of grapes a day, or 2 or 3 glasses of orange juice, that's almost a camouflaged fast, and we will eliminate quite a bit, but we will still be having fruits that give us energy. So we'll still be building up at the same time as we're eliminating. So it's kind of two things going on at once. And we can control the elimination. So if we think, oh, I'm eliminating too much on this mono diet and I've got children to care for, or I've got to work, or I want to exercise, we can increase the amount of fruit we're eating. So we can eat more, and eating more will slow the elimination. So a mono diet, we're more in control of elimination, whereas in a water fast, we are really on God's operating table. And water fasting, I think, is really good, really helpful for many people, but some people who have responsibilities or can't afford to do a long supervised water fast have an opportunity to do mono diets, which will cleanse in a similar way, maybe not as aggressively, maybe not as fast, but you will be able to, in many cases, continue your regular life, continue with your regular responsibilities while still cleansing.
Oh, thank you. And I have so many questions, but I'm seeing that we are about 15 participants. So I'm going to let people ask questions so that it should not be just a dialogue. It should be more of a group where people may have some things that they need to ask. So it's really open. I need people to talk now. Revital Abramis, welcome. I mute myself.
Nice to be back. Can I ask something? Hello.
Hi, yeah, please do.
Yeah, ask please.
Osteoporosis, in this case, is that a problem to be just in fruit? And by the way, another question, when you're saying you're fruitarian, are you also on vegetables, or it's just fruits? And where does the line go? And in terms of osteoporosis, is that a problem if you need your calcium and you need your, I don't know, to build the bone, the proteins, whatever? So
Well, for me, yeah, I'm on mostly a fruit diet. So I occasionally eat greens, occasionally eat nuts, but mostly it's fruit. And it varies. Some people are on a fruitarian diet, they will eat more greens, or they will eat more nuts or seeds. And really, it depends on the individual and their needs, and also really on the quality of the fruit. Because what I was talking about earlier was that calcium in plants depends on microorganisms in the soil. So the healthier the soil, the more alive the soil, the more calcium will be in those foods. So for instance, you could have some greens grown hydroponically, been in cold storage in the fridge for a few days, chemicals in them, and they will have less calcium in them than, say, a mamey sapote that's been grown in good soil with love, been picked perfectly ripe. So in general, greens may have higher calcium levels than fruit, but so much depends on the individual quality of that piece of fruit or piece of veg that you've got in your hand. So for me, the bottom line to ensure that calcium levels are met is to get the best quality produce, organic, biodynamic, local, people that build their soils up. You know, I'll go to local farmers, local growers that grow naturally and that put all the important micronutrients into their soils, and also that have a good microbe content in their soils. And vitamin D as well is very, very important. Phosphorus, magnesium are important minerals as well as calcium for building bones, but vitamin D. So I live somewhere where I get sun. Every day I will get in the sun for vitamin D production. If I lived somewhere that wasn't as warm, if my vitamin D levels were not high, I would supplement or get a vitamin D lamp, because vitamin D is also important for healthy bones. Now, I'm 54 and I've never broken a bone. I haven't got any shrinkage of my spine or height, so I don't think that I have any issues with my bones. I've fallen when running a couple of times, banged myself quite heavily, and I haven't broken anything or cracked anything. But for me, best way that I can protect myself is to exercise as well regularly, weight-bearing exercise. So cycling's great, swimming's great, but they're not weight-bearing exercise. So walking's excellent. If you have issues with your joints, walking is probably superior to running because you're not putting so much pressure on your joints. But weight-bearing exercise such as dancing, walking, running really help to build strong bones. So exercise combined with getting sufficient vitamin D and getting good quality produce, whether that's veg or whether that's greens or whether that's fruit, because fruit can be high in calcium as long as it's grown in good soil. Figs and oranges are two fruits that I try and eat a lot of. Both of them are high in calcium. Native figs, which grow in the tropics and subtropics, are particularly high in calcium. They're not the typical jammy Mediterranean figs, but they're very, very high in micronutrients. So ensuring I get the best possible fruit, I get adequate rest, good level of weight-bearing exercise and sunshine, for me, is what's important to have healthy bones. If I noticed that I was breaking any bones, if I was cracking bones, if my stature was shrinking, then I would think, well, hey, you know, something's not right and I need to reassess what I'm doing. Maybe I need to take, you know, more greens or look at the foods that I'm eating. But, you know, I've not had any kind of shrinkage of the spine, which can be an indication that you have osteoporosis, and just living a healthy diet and lifestyle. And everybody's an individual. So I would never say don't eat greens or don't eat vegetables. If you find that they work well for you, if they're one of your good sources of calcium, then, you know, I would say include them in the diet. But on the other hand, I don't think everybody needs them if they can access good quality fruits, which are high in calcium because they've been grown in soil where there are fungi that are breaking down those bonds in the calcium molecules and allowing the fruit trees or the fruit plants to assimilate the calcium. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers. I haven't broken any bones either, but in terms of density, the results are good. So I'm not waiting for something to happen. I'm just trying to be prepared in advance. And you're saying you were talking about vitamin D. Is that you taking supplements or is just the sun? You're taking.
No, I don't supplement because I live in Australia in Queensland and we get sun all year round. So I sunbathe all year round to get vitamin D. And also what's important with assimilating vitamin D from sunbathing is not to wash the whole body with soap afterwards because it can take up to 2 days to absorb the vitamin D that's created in the skin. And if we wash our skin with a lot of hot water and soap, we can stop the maximum amount of vitamin D being assimilated. So what I would suggest is wash the areas that need to be washed, but leave some areas, just put water on them, but don't put a lot of soap all over your body in order to maximize the assimilation of vitamin D, because there have been studies showing that people that wash a lot can get a lot of sunshine, but still be low in vitamin D because they're washing off the oils on their skin before the vitamin D is fully assimilated. If I was living somewhere else, I would probably get a vitamin D lamp as opposed to a supplement. But I think the sun is the best of all if you can get sun, because also the sun creates other compounds and other hormones in our bodies that are important. So sun is important. When we eat a natural diet, we have better protection against sunburn. But, you know, obviously you'll have to be mindful of the sun and you don't want to burn. A burn is not healthy. You don't want to have too much sun, but at the same time, getting adequate sun is very important for vitamin D. But the other options are lamps. Sperti, Sperti, is a European company or an American company, I'm not sure, but they ship globally and they make vitamin D lamps, high quality ones. I would do that, preferably to a supplement, but if I wasn't able to get a lamp, I would take a vegan vitamin D supplement. But also what's interesting is they did studies on the bone density of raw vegans. And what they found out was that even though raw vegans could be shown to have a low bone density, the other markers that are normally associated with osteoporosis were not there. So even though they were measured and they were told they had low bone density, their bones were very healthy. So that's an interesting study. And if you Google raw vegans bone density, it will bring the studies up. And those studies show that they only found it with raw vegans, not regular vegans. And I would still recommend, vitamin D as being important. But just because you have a low bone density, if you have none of the other markers of osteoporosis, then you may not have osteoporosis, or the thing that you get, osteomalia or whatever, before you actually get osteoporosis. So you can actually have, as a raw vegan, low bone density but not osteoporosis, according to these. They were actually scientific studies.
Okay, and you're saying exposure to the sun, but isn't it bad for the skin? Too much exposure, doesn't it age the skin, especially the face?
Yes, too much exposure can. So if you're concerned about your face aging, don't expose your face, expose another area of the body. And it doesn't have to be for that long. It can be like half an hour a day in the summer is enough. You don't have to lie there and fry in oil all day. But I think sun exposure is so important. And I have known some people on raw vegan diets that have had osteoporosis because they've avoided the sun. So I think the sun or vitamin D is important, but you can supplement. It's not as good as the sun because it's not just the vitamin D, a whole host of other compounds we get from the sun and the action of sun on the body. And I would suggest reading some books on sunlight and how important it is for the body. That doesn't mean to say that, you have to age your skin unnecessarily. But then for me, I like being outdoors. And yes, my skin has aged more than if I didn't go out in the sun. But overall, I don't think my health would be as good as if I'd never gone out in the sun, or if I limited my sun exposure. So it's, again, working around your own individual needs. For me, my health's been good, my bone health's been good. And I do go out in the sun, but I do a lot of gardening. I like growing my own food. And so I live an outdoor lifestyle, and that can be challenging in Australia. And yes, my skin is more aged than if I'd never gone out in the sun, but it's balancing at what's important to you and your own quality of life, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe there's a challenge here about teeth and pancreas. We got because they say the function of pancreas, the issues of metabolizing what do you call it? What proteins, and teeth. Sometimes there's a lot of do you call it what? Decay or something like that.
Well, there's two issues, I think, with dental hygiene and a fruit diet or any kind of diet. The first is bacterial decay, and bacterial decay is caused by certain strains of bacteria in the mouth. So dental hygiene is very, very important. Now, if you brush your teeth adequately, if you remove the plaque and the bacteria, you will not get cavities, whatever your diet is. But most people don't brush enough. And I don't know if you, at school, when we were at school, they would get you to brush your teeth, and then they would give you one of those tablets, and you rinsed your mouth and it showed just how much plaque was left after we thought we brushed our teeth well. Brushing teeth also, if you're eating fruit, don't brush immediately after you've eaten fruit unless it's dried fruit, which is sticky and gets around the teeth, because you will brush the acidity from the fruit into your tooth enamel. So with the first issue, which is dental decay, that is down purely to bacteria in the mouth. If you practice really good dental hygiene, you won't get tooth decay, but most of us don't. And when I started out on the fruit diet, I didn't realize that. I thought, I'm eating fruit, I'm not eating sugar, like refined sugar, I don't need to brush my teeth as much. But you do, you really need to brush your teeth. Another factor is genetics. Some people have very strong teeth genetically from their diets of their parents. They had a good diet, and from when they were children, they brushed their teeth well and they ate good quality fruits and vegetables. And another issue is that they don't have the bacteria in their mouths that cause tooth decay. So some people, you might know them, they eat sweets, they eat candy, they don't look after their teeth, but they still have very few cavities. And that is because they don't have those strains of bacteria in the mouth that cause decay. Other people do, and if they live the same diet and lifestyle, they would get cavities. So to prevent cavities, practice good dental hygiene. Brush your teeth 3 or 4 times a day, preferably before you eat fruit. After you've eaten fruit, you can rinse your mouth with water, wait half an hour, and then brush your teeth, so you're not brushing the fruit acids into the teeth. The other main issue with teeth is erosion of enamel, which is nothing to do with bacteria, but is to do with eating fruits that are high in acid, so a lower pH than optimal. And if you're eating underripe citrus, underripe pineapple, underripe kiwis, they can all damage the tooth enamel, especially if you've got weaker teeth. So it's not a good idea to eat those fruits if you've got dental issues, if you've got issues with your enamel, because they can strip. And I've known people eat underripe fruit and it has damaged their enamel very, very quickly on their teeth. And my older boy, he was brought up on a fruitarian diet and he never had a cavity. He had naturally very strong teeth. So you can be on a fruit diet and not get a single cavity as long as you practice good dental hygiene, and the genetics are also important. I would avoid dried fruit for the most part. Dried fruit sticks to the teeth and can cause cavities. I've known people that have got cavities from eating too much dried fruit. If I ever do have dried fruit or a fruitarian cake with dried fruit in it, I will brush my teeth immediately afterwards, and I will not eat any dried fruit if I can't brush my teeth immediately afterwards. I think that's very, very important, because the residue can stick to the teeth, cause plaque buildup and cause dental decay. So I think dental hygiene, using a toothpaste that, if you don't like using fluoride toothpaste, Theodent is a good brand of toothpaste. It contains an extract from cacao, which prevents cavities to the same level as a fluoride toothpaste, but doesn't contain the fluoride. That's Theodent. So that's a good toothpaste. So good dental hygiene, avoid underripe or acidic fruits. Brush the teeth before you eat, not directly afterwards. Rinse your mouth out with water. And if you ever eat a fruit that is high in acid and you can feel it on your teeth, you should never be able to feel a fruit on your teeth. Rinse immediately with water and rinse until you can't feel that kind of rough feeling on your teeth, because that will be damaging your tooth enamel. So I think it's really important to have good dental hygiene. Regarding the pancreas will function effectively if we give the body what it needs. The pancreas of people that eat a lot of cooked carbohydrates, such as people in Southeast Asia that eat a lot of rice, is twice as big as it should be, because the pancreas can be compromised when we eat a lot of cooked carbohydrates. When we eat raw carbohydrates, it doesn't compromise. So the pancreas can be affected by refined carbohydrates, cooked carbohydrates. The pancreas will normalize on a raw vegan diet, that's what I believe, where we're not eating processed or refined sugars. The sugars in fruit are bound up with fiber, they're bound up with phytonutrients that make them release slowly into the bloodstream, and we don't get these issues. But yes, I do think the pancreas can be affected by a high carbohydrate diet if that's processed and cooked carbohydrates. And I know a couple of people that are type 1 diabetics that have cut down the insulin they need to inject. They're always going to need to inject insulin because they don't produce any, by going on a high fruit diet. So you can even live with type 1 diabetes and be on a high fruit diet. And I've known several people with type 2 diabetes, which is usually brought on by obesity and issues with health as you get older, and they've been able to totally reverse type 2 diabetes by going on a raw vegan diet. So pancreatic health can be really helped, I believe, by a raw vegan diet.
And that is very key, because we have so many people who are going to listen to this later. if somebody has reversed it, it has happened to one, it can happen to all. Yeah,
Yes,
that's the
yes.
message. Yeah, yeah.
And that's type 2. Type 1 won't reverse because the pancreas doesn't produce any insulin at all. But people that I've known on a high fruit diet have reduced very drastically the amount of insulin they need to inject. And also they've not got a lot of the associated issues that diabetics can have, you know, due to numbness in the feet and problems with their eyesight, things like that. They've maintained very good health.
Oh, thank you. How about apart from okay, maybe you can give us more outline on those people you have helped or those you've known on various other diseases, other types of ailments, and other yeah. Maybe it will be a very good message, yeah, to those, to give them hope and to give them even a way of
Well, if some very serious health issues such as cancer can be really helped by a raw vegan diet. And there have been many people that have helped thousands of people heal from cancer by using raw vegan diets. And the people that I'd like to mention, there was Dr. Christine Nolfi, who practiced in Denmark in the 1940s and the 1950s. She had a sanitarium and she put cancer patients on 100% raw vegan diets, not mixes, mainly mono meals. She didn't store any fruits or vegetables. They were eaten fresh and whole, or if people didn't have good enough teeth, they were grated and eaten straight away. And she reversed cancer in many cases, especially breast cancer in women. And Joanna Brandt, she wrote The Great Cure. She helped hundreds of people heal from cancer using grape mono diets. And there's a guy called Jan Dries, who's a Belgian naturopath, and he's written a book called The Dries Cancer Diet. And he, again, has helped many people heal from advanced cancers by having a fruit and vegetable raw diet. So there's many, many documented cases. I've met people personally who've healed from cancer. I've got a friend, Jeanette, here in Australia, and she had breast cancer. Her doctor gave her 6 months to live. She changed her diet and lifestyle, and she runs marathons all the time now, and she's in her early 70s. So a diagnosis of cancer, as long as it's not too far advanced, can be really helped, I believe, by this diet and lifestyle, because cancer is usually a final stage of the body. It's tried other things to deal with whatever issues are going on. And the cancer has been going on usually a long time in the body before it's noticed. When the cancer finally presses on a lung or the brain, and we are aware then that we've got the cancer, it can be very advanced. But even in certain advanced cases, it can be reversed, and it has been reversed through diet and lifestyle changes, because we start to give our body what it needs to heal. And it's our body that always heals. It's not the fruit that heals our body. The fruit helps our body heal. Other things that we do, exercise or meditation or positive thinking, they all help us to heal, but it's the body, our body, that actually does the healing when it's given the right conditions. So the body can heal even from very, very serious illness. I really do believe that, and I've met many people that have healed from cancer. I've read many cases of people healing from cancer. One case in the Jan Dries book, The Dries Cancer Diet, was a woman, and she had a big tumor under her collarbone. And she went to see her oncologist, and she was very, very excited. She said, I'm going to try this new Dries diet to try and heal my body. And her oncologist just laughed at her and said, diet has never cured anyone from cancer. And she went away and she went on the diet for only 11 days. And after 11 days, she went back to her oncologist and he couldn't find the tumor. And he went, I've never seen anything like this. You know, what happened? And she said, oh, diet never cured cancer. And he said, oh, I do apologize. You know, it's just nothing that I've ever come across before. So there's many, many stories like that. And it's not just diet. You've got to have the other things as well. So support, positive thinking, sunshine, fresh air, deep breathing, all these things. And if we give our body is amazing, and our body is always working in our best interest. I truly believe that our body is always working in our best interest. whatever we try and do to it, and we don't always understand, we might not understand why we've got a rash or why we've got a sore knee or what's going on. But our body is always trying to do its best to heal in whatever situation. And when we start giving our body what it needs to heal and stop thwarting it by stimulants, by drugs, by processed foods, by not getting enough sleep, by not exercising, by breathing shallowly or breathing polluted air, when we stop doing that, our body has its best shot at healing, and heal it will, it will heal. It's even when people are older, even in their 80s and 90s, they can reverse conditions. They may not have the same healing capacity as a person in their 20s, but they still can make changes. They can still feel a whole lot better. And that can start very quickly in a week or two of even a person in their 80s or 90s, in my experience, can start to feel better through dietary changes. So it's never too late to turn your life about. Every day we have the chance to make effective choices, or we have the chance to make less effective choices in terms of our body feeling the best it can and working efficiently.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. The ideas that are coming to my mind as you are talking, or maybe how I'm analyzing, like I say, synthesizing my brain. It's like everything has a solution, especially health issues. The only problem is information. Some people don't have the true or the right information, and that's why they those failures in one area or the other. But talking about this person who has taken 11 days on raw diet and it's already okay. It's like the doctor is like, oh, so it means the doctor was not that informed. You didn't know about this. He didn't know about this raw diet thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes we run to them. We run to them to find help from them. Yet they don't have that information sometimes.
A lot of doctors don't, because they have, they have 7 years of training, but in that training, they don't spend a lot of time looking at nutrition. And so I think more and more we're going to get integrated health. So we're going to get allopathic doctors who do take more of an interest in nutrition and integrate alternative health with more conventional health, because you can do that. And what Jan Dries found as well is that the people that were going through chemotherapy with the cancer, which is a very much an allopathic modality, got less side effects from the chemotherapy when they were incorporating his diet. So it doesn't mean because we're having a raw vegan diet that we have to totally shun allopathic medicine. And something else that I think is important is our individual needs. What works for one person may not work for another. And we have different health histories. Our parents have had different health histories. And we have different genetics. So everybody has slightly different needs. And making blanket prescriptions for everybody is not, in my opinion, very effective. We need to look at what works for us as an individual, how many calories we need, how much fat we need in our diet, how many greens we need, how much fruit, and get that balance. And try it, and try going through a transitional period where you're having maybe more fruit or less fruit, and find what works for you. And some people have got underlying health issues, which mean they have sensitivity to certain types of fruit sugars. And so they need to heal before they can eat certain types of fruit. And when they're healed, then they can eat more fruit. So it's about really finding what works for you and tailoring everything for your individual needs and listening to your own body. Because you can listen to 1,000 people talking, you can read 1,000 books, but your own body is your own best teacher if you'll only listen to it. If you clear out all the stuff that's going on, and if you're eating naturally and you're not filling your body with stimulants or drugs or really processed food, your body will start to talk to you in a way that you can hear, and you will be your own best teacher. In my experience, listen to your body, listen to its needs, try things, see what works, see what doesn't work. But, don't blindly take the advice of anybody else. You've got to do it for yourself.
I had an experience some time back. I was transitioning to raw vegan totally. I didn't want anything to do with dairy products at what. But then I made a mistake. I'm just trying to emphasize on the listening to your body, and took processed food, just 30, is it 300 ml of soda. That was had been a Sprite. I thought I'd taken poison. My body that night I couldn't sleep, but totally. I felt like something's just overturning. It's like something I got into my system that is trying to push it out. The system's like, this thing is not for you. So that part of listening to the body is number one. Yeah, the first thing somebody has to know is that the body is very intelligent. It will tell you what you need. It tells you this one you don't need. So you keep on listening the way I've said it. It's very true. Very, that's the right path to go. And something else I wanted also maybe on clarification on when you do you sometimes feel these issues of binge eating, where you sometimes feel just you need just some type of a fruit and you want to eat a lot of it, like these people have cravings, especially with carbohydrates and these other things. Do you have a problem like something like that?
I don't think it's so much a craving as tuning into your body and listening to what it needs. So I think when you're on a clean diet, your body will say that I really fancy orange juice, or I really fancy some pears, or I really fancy a mamey sapote. And maybe there is something in that fruit. Maybe you need more beta carotene, or you need more calcium, or you need more magnesium or copper, or whatever that fruit might be high in. And I think it's clear we do get, I wouldn't say it's a craving. I think a craving often is more for something that is not so helpful for our body, such as, a donut or a packet of chips or something. People say, well, I really want chocolate. I'm really craving chocolate. And I think with fruit, it's more a desire. Or some people greens, they might get a real desire to have a big bowl of spinach. And I think when you're craving a mono food, so if you're craving spinach, or if you're craving mamey sapote, or if you're, getting a desire for it, then that is more of a true need. If you think, oh, I'm really craving, a sort of chocolate bar, or I'm really craving a cake, that is more to do with a craving or a desire for something that's maybe not so helpful for our bodies. But I think if we ever really desire something in its mono, totally unprocessed state, then that is a good indication that our body actually needs it, rather than there's some kind of craving, which is almost like an addiction, because cooked and processed foods have excitotoxins in them. And excitotoxins make us crave these foods, whereas unprocessed fruit and vegetables don't have excitotoxins in. So when we're desiring fruit and vegetables, I tend to think it's because we need something that's in those foods, rather than an addictive kind of craving for them. Another thing is that our gut bacteria will make us crave certain foods. So if we're eating junk food and highly processed foods, we have a different gut environment. We have different gut flora in there. And those gut flora live on junk food, and they will make us crave it, because our gut is like our second brain. It's got a lot of neurotransmitters in there. And it's very much related and connected to our actual brain and our head. It's like our second brain. So the gut bacteria will cause us to crave junk food, because that's what they live on. When we change our diet and lifestyle, our gut flora changes. So we no longer have the bacteria in our gut that are associated with junk food. And so we're less likely to crave them. So I think if we're craving junk food or processed foods, it's either because we have the gut bacteria that are craving them, or there are excitotoxins in the food, or opiate-like substances in the processed food that cause us to crave them. I think when we're eating a natural diet, we don't have the cravings. It's more of a desire, and our body is telling us what it needs, rather than being dictated to by addiction or unhelpful gut bacteria.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Yeah, didn't you have cravings for a spicy food, maybe salty food? I mean, do you have to trying to taste, not to eat the bad foods, but the spice. Don't you feel like you need spices? Because it's just sweet. It's not just too sweet all the time.
I do eat some savoury fruits, so tomatoes, red bell peppers, avocados, cucumbers, they're all botanically fruits and they've got a savoury taste. So if I'm feeling more like a savoury flavour, I will have the vegetable fruits. I still eat them mono because that's how I eat. So I would have a meal of cucumbers or a meal of avocado or a meal of red pepper. And so, yes, if you're getting more of a taste for something savoury, I never really ate many spicy foods when I was on a cooked diet. I was never really attracted to them. So I never really crave spicy foods. But if I fancy something more savoury, then I will have, the savoury type fruits and make a meal of them. So I don't always eat sweet foods, but when I do mono diets, the longest mono diet I did was 6 months on melons, on European melons, and I didn't crave anything savoury. The whole 6 months I was very, very satisfied on the melons. But having said that, I made sure that I got orange fleshed and honeydew melons because they have a good sodium content in them, whereas watermelon doesn't so much, and especially close to the skin. So when I was on my melon mono diet, I ate very close to the skin, and that seemed to satisfy because that was more of a savoury taste there, and also the sodium content of those melons is good. So yeah, I have had long periods where I've had no savoury fruits, but I've been, ensured that I've included the sweet fruits that have got a decent sodium content in them. But I think,
You mentioned before, what were you trying to say?
I was just saying that, but everybody's different, and some people on a raw diet may crave more savoury, more greens. And then I say, if you're craving something, especially mono, because all other animals in nature eat mono. So our natural diet, really, we can see that it's natural if we're craving something in its mono, totally unprocessed state. So I think if you're craving something more savoury like greens or a vegetable, then it'd be a good idea to go with that, as long as you're not mixing it up too much, because then it's hard to know what you're really desiring. But if you're desiring something in its mono state, it's a very clear message to me. If you're desiring spinach or kale or something savoury like that, then your body probably needs it.
You talked about the acidity, teeth and acidity. I mean, citrus fruits and lemons, isn't that a problem? Even if they're ripe, citrus fruits and lemons cause
lemons,
problems.
Yeah, I think lemons, I wouldn't advise drinking lemon juice neat or anything like that if you want to keep your tooth enamel. But oranges, if you get really ripe oranges, you can get pH paper from the chemist or from health food shops to test the pH of your fruits. For example, I went to look at somebody that had oranges for sale, and I tested some of their oranges. Now, they had a Valencia variety and a navel. Now, the time when they were selling their oranges, the navel was in season, it was ripe. The Valencia, it was too early. And I tested the pH of those two fruits. The navels had a pH of 6, which is very low acid, because 7 is neutral, 1 is really acidic. So a pH of 6 for an orange, you wouldn't feel that on your teeth. That would not, in my opinion, damage tooth enamel. I tested the Valencias, they had a pH of 4, which is potentially 100 times as acidic, because each pH number you go along is times 10. And those oranges, if I'd have eaten them, they would have damaged my tooth enamel. So in general, navel oranges are less acidic. Of all the varieties, they have the least acid in it, especially if they're ripe. If navel oranges are really, really ripe, they will fall off the tree, and they will, because of their skin, they will stay on the ground unless something eats them for a few weeks and still be good to eat. And at that point, they are very, very low in acid, and they would not damage the tooth enamel. If ever you have anything and you feel it on your tooth, then rinse with water afterwards, test with pH paper to see what the acidity is. With kiwis, if you have an underripe green kiwi, it can be really acidic and it would damage the tooth enamel, but the golden kiwis are less acidic. And if a golden kiwi is perfectly ripe, you will not feel it on your teeth. So even with the more acidic fruit, similar with pineapple, most pineapple is picked underripe, and pineapples will not ripen after picking. They're what's known as a non-climacteric fruit, which means it doesn't have a starch reserve and it doesn't respire after it's picked, so it will not properly ripen. So most pineapples, unless you're living in a pineapple growing area, the pineapples will be picked underripe so they don't spoil during transportation, and they can be very acidic. If you buy a truly ripe pineapple, you will not feel it on your teeth. You will not get a sore tongue, but it's rare. So for the three main acidic fruits, the citrus, in terms of oranges or tangerines, not lemons because they're always pretty acidic, kiwis and pineapple, if they're properly ripe, they will not damage tooth enamel. If they're underripe, they can damage tooth enamel in a very short period of time. I had a friend who ate underripe citrus and in a matter of weeks severely damaged irreparably his tooth enamel. So it is very, very serious, but again, it's about quality of fruit, ripeness, very, very important. And if you have issues with your enamel, then maybe avoid the pH. They have an alkaline ash, so they're alkaline forming in the body, but their initial pH is acidic. I would avoid those fruits until your enamel gets stronger, and enamel will regrow to some extent unless it's very badly damaged and it's down to the dentine. I did a period where I was juicing oranges in my mouth, and I had a little bit of enamel erosion on my two front top teeth, and the dentist said that will repair itself, and I avoided underripe fruit and it did, it repaired itself. So even if we have some amount of enamel erosion, if we're careful about what we eat and we avoid pH acidic foods, as long as it's not too badly damaged, we can get some repair of dental enamel as well.
There's another question. I don't know if you're familiar with it, or UT, urine therapy. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I've heard of it, yes, and I've read a book about it as well, yeah. Do you want to know what I think about it? Oh.
Yeah, you haven't tried it.
I haven't tried it, no. I've read a book by, I can't remember his name, but he wrote the book in the 1940s, I believe, and he got a lot of people.
Armstrong, maybe. You're talking about Armstrong.
Could be, yes. And nothing else would heal a lot of his clients, but he used urine therapy and it worked. For me, I'm not so attracted to it. I think if it works, if you use it and it works for you, fair enough. I've had friends that have regularly drunk their urine. It doesn't appeal to me. I feel that with my diet and lifestyle, it's not something I personally need, but again, everybody's individual. I think if it works for you, it's certainly not going to be harmful, and many people have found it to be very, very helpful. So I think it's individual thing. I'm open to it. I was interested to read more about it, and I would be interested to further research on it, but for myself, I'm not really attracted to drink my urine. But that doesn't mean to say I think it's invalid, and I think it has worked very well for a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And maybe about vision, your eyes, because you are not using glasses. How about your eyes?
No, my eyesight's good. I haven't needed to use glasses. I'm hoping that I won't have to use glasses. And something else that I noticed about my eyesight was the first time I did an extended orange juice diet, which was 52 days after I'd been on the juice diet, after I'd been on the fruit diet for a few years. And my colour vision, I noticed that my colour vision improved so much, and especially red and green. And I would be just staring at red flowers because they would just pop, and green moss on the footpath. So my colour vision is very good on a fruit diet. I have noticed that the colours are clear and sharp. And in terms of my regular vision, I haven't needed to use glasses. I'm hoping that I won't need to use glasses. I do believe that there's exercises as well that you can do if you don't want to start wearing glasses. So I think there's alternatives to wearing glasses. And I think as well, one issue, if you start to wear glasses, you can become dependent on them. But some people use the pinhole specs to improve their sight. Other people use certain exercises. I think one challenge we have with using computers a lot is that it's not good for our vision because we're looking at the same distance at the screen, and really we should be every 15 minutes breaking that up and, you know, sort of taking our point of focus away from the computer screen. So I think that's a possible issue to damaging eyesight. But I think what's very important is to have a natural diet and lifestyle, because what happens to many people is their lenses change shape, and when their lenses change shape or become less flexible as they age, they start to need glasses. And a lot of people in their 40s or 50s start to need glasses. But yeah, I think eating fruits that are high in beta carotene is very important. So orange fleshed melons, oranges, papayas, any fruit that is orange in colour. Papaya also is very good. It has certain other minerals and antioxidants in that are good for vision. So just, you know, eating a lot of good quality fruit, I think, is very good for eye health.
How
Can I
about your
ask,
water intake? Sorry. I need to get a person a chance to talk to us before. But the question is about how you take water. You are going to answer handle it later. Let me give a person a chance. Who is that? Introduce yourself, please, and
Yeah,
then you ask the
it's
question.
Angela here. Yeah, I want to ask about her mono diet. How much oranges does she take? Does she eat the fruits or just simply make juice and have it?
Thanks very much for your questions, Angela. Every other fruit, when I'm mono, I eat the whole fruit, because I think in general, eating a whole fruit is superior. But with oranges, I do juice them. I use a hand juicer that retains most of the fibre. So I don't remove the fibre from the juice. The fibre is mainly in the juice. And I would juice between 20 and 30 oranges a day, have between a litre and a litre and a half of orange juice most days, but some days I might have less hunger, have a smaller amount. Other days I might be very active or just feel, you know, more of a need and have slightly more. But in general, about 1.5 litres a day. And yeah, about 20 to 30 oranges, depending on the size of the orange, I would juice in a day when I do an orange juice mono diet.
And from your experience, how does it heal your body? The orange juice. Why would you choose orange juice if that's the case? Is it specifically for your colon, for the intestine?
I think one thing when choosing what fruit to mono diet on, one thing that's important is it has to be a fruit that you're attracted to, that you like. It's no good thinking, I know grapes are great to mono on, but I can't stand them. So it's got to be a fruit, and I really do like orange juice. Second thing, you've got to be able to access good quality oranges if you want to do an orange juice mono diet. And here in Australia, I can get organic oranges all year round at a very reasonable price. And you know, they're of good quality. So a fruit that you're attracted to, you can access it and you can get good quality fruits. So in Australia, my preferred mono diet is oranges because of those 3 factors. When I'm in Europe, I will mono on melons. Where I am at the moment, I can't always get enough variety of melons to do a melon mono diet. So I choose to do oranges for that reason. And I find different fruits affect different parts of the body more or less. For instance, oranges are very good, in my experience, for the respiratory system. My breathing is good when I'm on oranges. I have very little mucus. I seem to breathe more deeply and my lungs feel really, really strong. And it's interesting that orange juice has been found to help prevent respiratory viruses. So especially at this time when many people are concerned about COVID, orange juice has been found scientifically to help prevent us getting respiratory viruses. So I think orange juice works very well at the level of our respiratory system, also our digestive system. What I find for me is that orange juice helps rebalance and increase the effectiveness of my digestive system. So when I finish my orange juice diet, I feel like I've had a total tune-up with my digestive system. Other fruits have different effects. I find grapes have more of a beneficial effect on my circulatory system, and pineapples are very, very cleansing and have a good effect and are really good if you have cancer. So different fruits work, have a bigger or lesser impact on different bodily systems that I found. But oranges for me, I can access them easily, I enjoy them, and I can get good quality organic ones. So that would be the reasons why I chose orange juice, especially when I'm in Australia.
Thank you. Another thing, I wanted to hear your opinion about fruits, that I've heard a lot from other people saying that it causes a spike in the glucose level. What is your experience on that, and how would you counteract that idea?
Well, in my experience, before I went on a fruit diet, I would often get a slump in energy. About 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if I sat down, I'd want a nap. Since I've been on the fruit diet, my energy has been sustained, and I don't eat so much dried fruit. I think dry fruit is very high in sugar. I don't generally have juices apart from orange juice, which I hand juice and leave the fibre in. So I haven't found I have spikes in energy and then slumps. I've found for myself that my energy has been very, very even. I have active days, I'm busy all day, and I don't need to have a nap. I don't take a nap or a rest in the afternoon. I don't feel a need to do that because I have good sleep at night. By the time I go to bed, I feel nicely tired and I sleep well. Also, it was interesting, some scientists experimented. So they had a meal that was high in refined sugars, and they looked at the patient's blood sugar levels afterwards. And what they found out was, I think it was an equivalent of 6 teaspoons of sugar in this. It was a sugary breakfast cereal. And they had spikes in blood sugar, which caused fat to be released into the bloodstream. And then what they did, they added fruit to the cereal. So the actual sugar content was now increased to, say, 8 teaspoons of sugar. So the total sugar content was more, but when they added the fruit, the blood sugar level spikes were less, and less fat was introduced into the bloodstream. So even though there was more total sugar, because the fruit had its phytonutrients and its fiber in there, that actually reduced the whole sugar spiking, not just, the fruit not sugar spiking, but the actual sugary cereal caused less of an issue. So experiments like that can show that fruit in its whole form, and even if it's juiced, if it has its fiber left in it, doesn't cause us to have spikes and dips in energy. So, for me, that experiment was really, really interesting, because even though there was more total sugar, because yes, you've added some berries to this bowl of sugary cereal, the sugary cereal was having less of a bad effect because it had the fruit added to it. So I do believe that whole, good quality fruit grown in good soil is never a cause of illness or a cause of blood sugar spikes. But I would caution to limit the amount of dried fruit, because that is very concentrated in sugar.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I ask question?
Yes, please do.
Oh yeah. Thanks for making very useful information, because I'm very new, and I'm sorry I'm being late. So perhaps if you already mentioned it, I'm sorry, but I'm really curious about being fruitarian. What do you think about the protein and fat you got I mean, because fruitarian, I guess, is a lot of carb and sugar, but what about protein and fat? And I guess you really look very energized and really very active. And how can you do that? I mean, I think that you don't have plenty protein or fat. And actually, I'm a teacher, so I really like to teach and speak a lot. What do you think about it? Is it still okay for me to try, like consume a lot of oranges and melon or something? Because I still have some health issues. I really like to getting sleepy, just for a couple hours, getting sleepy and really not active, and a lot of brain fogging and sometimes
Mhm.
some stuff, and also my eyes is very blurry. Yeah, so
Mm.
I guess I'm feeling so interested with this topic. Perhaps you
Yeah,
can help me. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Regarding protein and fat, especially with protein, it's actually quite hard to be protein deficient unless you're also calorie deficient. And when we see children in African countries who have the big extended stomachs and they are deficient in protein, it's mainly because they are deficient in calories. Now, if you have a deficiency in calories, the most important thing for the body to do is to keep the heart and the brain working, because if the heart and the brain aren't working, we will die. So any protein that is ingested, instead of being used for the normal processes of protein, which is, sort of like repairing cells and growth and hair, instead it will be converted to use for energy. So you will become protein deficient if you are very calorie deficient. If you're eating enough calories for your needs, it is hard to become protein deficient. Fruit does contain protein. All fruit contains protein. Avocados contain more protein, so they can be a good fruit to eat if we want to up the protein intake of a fruit diet. And greens as well. Greens are pretty high in protein. Nuts and seeds, if we add those to a raw vegan diet, again, they're quite high in protein. But it is, unless you have issues assimilating protein, it's hard to be protein deficient as long as you're getting sufficient calories. And a lot of the required daily amounts for protein are very, very high. And when we have a lot of protein, especially animal proteins, it can leach some important minerals from our body, such as calcium, because calcium is used to alkaline the body, and animal proteins can acidify the blood. So calcium is leached from the bones and the teeth because it's very, very important to keep our blood at a specific pH. Also, the body recycles a lot of the protein that we eat. The body is very, very effective. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the protein we eat isn't all excreted. The protein that we eat is recycled. And when cells die, a lot of the protein in the cells, again, is recycled in our body. And I think a good indication should be if you're not getting enough protein, there will be deficiency symptoms. So wound healing. If your wounds don't heal very well, you could be protein deficient. If your hair doesn't grow well, if you've got issues with your skin, if you have, rashes or problems on your skin, you may have issues with protein deficiency. But if you've got energy, if you're healthy, if your skin's good, if you heal well after injury, you're very likely that you won't have issues with protein deficiency. And I've been doing this diet for 29 years. I've had 2 pregnancies on the diet. My pregnancies have been very, very healthy, and my children have been healthy. So I truly believe that I was getting enough protein for my needs. But you can up protein by including more greens and more seeds and nuts if you feel you have a need for more protein in the diet. With fats, fats are important in the diet, and especially for women, we need a certain amount of body fat. And I've always had my female cycle on this diet, even when my body fat has been quite low, when I've done a mono diet or when I fasted and my weight's gone down temporarily and my body fat's gone down, I've still always had a regular female cycle, which I take is an indication that I'm getting enough fat and enough nutrient needs met to be healthy. Because if a woman isn't getting enough fat, if her body fat's too low, her period will cease because her body's not in a fit state to carry a pregnancy. And with the fats, there are certain fruits that are very good for fat. Avocados, really healthy fats in avocados, and actually the fats in avocados are good fats, and they help raise our HDL levels, which is the good cholesterol, and they help lower the LDLs, which is the bad cholesterol. So a period of my life when I was eating a lot of avocado, and I went and had a blood test to make sure everything was okay. Everything was in normal range, but the doctor said to me, your cholesterol level is very, very good. He said, in fact, it's the best cholesterol levels I've ever seen. And that was a period when I was eating a lot of avocado. So they have good fat, which helps raise the good cholesterol and lowers the bad cholesterol. Durian, which is a lovely fruit, that's also high in fat. And young coconut flesh can be a good addition to the diet for more fat. Few nuts and seeds. So there are fruits that we can eat that are higher in fat if we need more fat in our diet. But other times I've been for 6 months with no fatty fruits. I've had good oil levels in my skin and hair. So I do believe that we can get our fat needs met at certain times in our lives without actually eating any fatty foods. But yes, there's certainly fruits that are high in fat that can be included to up our fat levels. And we need to balance it to work out what works well for ourselves. So some people may need more fat, some people may need more greens, some people may need a few extra nuts and seeds to up their protein and fat levels. And it's about finding that balance that works for you. And, you know, everybody's slightly different. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's
Thank
really
you.
helpful. Yeah.
Thanks. And
Yeah.
I did mention earlier on that I have a copy of my book that I send out as a free PDF copy.
So I think, Anne, you will just send me. We have a big group here, so a WhatsApp group. Actually, the members were even requesting if you can join the ask you questions there. But I think they are doing well here, asking you questions live here.
Yeah.
So you just send to me. I'll forward to all of them.
I can put it in chat. I can put my email address in chat. I think.
What we'll do, let me tell you how we always do it easier. You will send me, okay, I've gotten your email, so I'll write it down. And if possible, we can also put it into the group. I'll put it in the group there.
And I also have my website, which has some articles on the Fruitarian diet. But yeah, I can send a free copy of my book. It's not in print at the moment. I need to get another copy, another print copy, but I have a PDF copy of it. It's called Fruitarianism, The Path to Paradise, and I send out a free PDF to anybody that emails me.
Okay. So yeah, that's okay. And what else? There was also the last question about my last question about water intake. How would you yeah.
Water's an interesting one because some people that are on a raw food diet don't drink any water at all, and other people say yes, you have to have 8 glasses a day. And what I prescribe is by your thirst levels. Sometimes in the winter, or if I'm in a cooler country and I'm having all juicy fruits, I don't drink any water at all. And yet I'm still well hydrated. I still urinate, you know, frequently. My urine's a good color. But other times, when it's summer here, when it's very humid, if I'm exercising more, then I will drink maybe a litre and a half of water a day. And I go by my thirst mechanism, and I also ensure that I'm urinating enough times a day and that the colour of my urine is a light colour and it's not dark or scanty. So I think it really depends on your diet. People that eat processed foods and cooked foods will need to drink a lot more water because those foods are dehydrating. If your diet is mostly juicy fruits and you're living in a bit of a cooler climate, you probably won't need to drink so much water to keep hydrated. But again, individual needs. If you're detoxing, then you might feel a need to drink more water and go by your thirst mechanism. As people age, their thirst mechanism becomes less effective if they're not healthy. So a lot of older people can actually get severely dehydrated because they're eating a processed diet, but in addition, their thirst mechanism is impaired. I think if we keep ourselves healthy, we will retain a good thirst mechanism into our old age. So we will always know when we need to drink water. And I think if I feel thirsty, I drink water. If I don't feel thirsty, I don't drink water. And because my diet is comprised of foods that are 90% water, and that's pure water, like distilled in the fruit, then I don't drink water. If I do drink water, I drink spring water. I prefer spring water in glass bottles. That's the ultimate for me. I don't like water that's been in plastic packaging as much. So at the moment, the water I'm drinking is an Australian natural spring water that comes in. It comes in big glass bottles which you can reuse and recycle. But yeah, there's been times when I've not drunk water for weeks and weeks, when I've been in the cooler months and I've been drinking, you know, a lot of orange juice, for instance. So I think it's, but yes, if you have an impaired thirst mechanism, you need to be aware of analysing your urine to make sure you're not dehydrated. But if anybody has got, you know, a working, a good, effective thirst mechanism, that will tell them whether they need to drink or not.
Thank you. Thank you. Has anybody has question? Anybody else has a question?
Hi, Anne.
Hello.
This is Rory from South Africa.
Hello.
I've actually been a friend of yours on social media, I think, for about 20 years.
Wow.
I think it goes right back to MySpace days, actually.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, so very nice to finally say hello, and also to offer you a great big thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
yeah,
you
I recognised your name when it came up on the screen. I thought, I recognise that name. Yeah. Oh, good to connect here.
Yeah, wonderful to be connected. And yeah, thank you so much for Jeepers, everything you're doing and you are. And you know, you offered me the inspiration to raise my firstborn for a few years on fruit diet. Gave me the confidence because of your experience with your son. So again, thank you.
Thanks.
I personally, I haven't managed to ground a fruitarian diet, although, you know, I've been experimenting on and off for, 20 years. And some of the things I found quite a bit challenging was just getting back into negative eating cycles. So, you know, the longest I maintained a raw vegan diet was 2 years. And it was very challenging being with loved ones that aren't on the diet, etc. I think social pressures for me are the greatest challenge. So that would be one question I'd love to hear your maybe advice and inspiration about. And another question is, a lot of people in this group are obviously fasting a lot and cleansing, and you know, you're the longest term fruitarian I've ever had the opportunity to speak to. So in your 29 years, I'm sure you've, you know, just on the diet alone, especially with your mono diet, you must have achieved high levels of cleansing. And of course, you've mentioned you've been on water fasts, etc., which would have also accelerated that. But yeah, I would love to know your thoughts just on terms of what sort of cleansing and healing can happen, just you'd say purely on a fruit diet versus, you know, maybe not going all the way on just fasting. So yeah, fruit diet versus fasting, etc. Yeah, those two questions. I could ask you a billion questions, but those two would be great.
So kind of starting with the social issues and social pressure, I think what really helped me when I started out on the fruit diet, there was like 5 or 6 of us. We'd all gone to this talk by David Shelley. We were all ethical vegans. We all thought, hey, you know, we want some of what he's got and we want to start doing this diet. So that was very helpful, having close friends that were on a similar path. So that really did help me at the beginning, as well as having a fruit buying group. So we got good quality fruit from all over the world. But as I said at the beginning about faith, and faith founded on knowledge, research, networking, sharing. So being in groups with other like-minded people, sharing experiences, even if there's local meetups in your area, you know, meeting people kind of face to face as much as you can with the restrictions going on at the moment. I think that's helpful, but also our own individual knowledge. And the more I kind of still get really excited about books, I still find new books, new research papers. And there was the stuff going on in South Africa at the University of Pretoria with the experiments on Fruitarian athletes and stuff in the 1970s. And so there's a lot of stuff in our recent history that inspires me and excites me, as well as looking at anatomy, physiology, biology, dietetics. And I think for me, the more faith I have personally, the more excited I get about it, that kind of overrides a lot of the social stuff. And it becomes so kind of like I have so much faith that this is a good diet that I kind of want to share that with people. And it doesn't matter so much what other people are doing, because for me, I know really deep inside that it is a rational diet, as well as being a spiritual diet. It's very rational on that scientific level. And I think there are strategies as well that we can do socially. I've been out to dinner many, many times and I've eaten fruit. I've been to expensive restaurants, I've been to clubs, I've been to various places, and I will ring up first and I'll say, I'm coming for a dinner with my friends. Can you cater for me? Can you just do me a simple fruit platter? All I want is a plate of fruit, no dressing, nothing, just very simple. 9 times out of 10, they can do that. And actually, sometimes the chefs will enjoy, you know, creating something that's a bit different because, you know, it's a bit of a challenge to them. In the rare instances where they've said, no, we haven't got any fruit, we can't do that, I've then said, well, if I bring my own fruit in, can you plate it up for me? And they've done that. So I've never had a situation socially where I haven't been able to go out with my friends, but it does take a little planning sometimes in advance. I've even, when I was on a melon mono diet, I went out with some friends to a fancy place, had a 3-course dinner and had 3 courses of melon. They just brought out watermelon at each course. So I think if we don't see ourselves as being different, if we have faith in what we're doing, it can be fun to go out with people and have something different. And when people go out socially anyway, they don't always eat the same thing. One might have, you know, like this meal, the other person has a different meal. So why is it any different if we have a different meal to them? And I think it is really having that faith in what we're doing. If we start to feel unsure in what we're doing, if we start to question it, then maybe we need to do more research. We need to connect more with other people. We need to look more at the science of it so that we've got that sort of confidence in what we're doing, and that will be mirrored back to us in how people treat us and people respond to our diet. If they see that we're very confident in what we're doing, that we know what we're talking about, if they ask us a question, where do you get so and so from, how can you get this, is the body adapted to a fruit diet, and if we can give them scientific answers, then they're more likely to take us seriously. And I think as well, when we're confident in what we're doing, if someone does criticize us, if someone does make fun of us, we don't really care. We can just accept that because we know our faith is more important than what anyone else thinks of what we're doing. But it's not a blind faith. It's a faith that's built on experience and research. And with my children, we've had many, many Fruitarian parties, and people are lovely. They come, they enjoy the parties because they're children at the end of the party. They don't go away hyperactive because they've had sugar and chocolate and chemicals. And they actually go away, they've had their 5 pieces of fruit and veg. And I think people also can surprise us with how they support us. With my eldest son, his first year at school, and the schools made little stockings for the children, and in the regular stockings they put in candies and, you know, processed foods, but they made a special stocking for him and they just put fruit and nuts in, which was lovely. And another time, a friend of mine, she wasn't even vegan or vegetarian, certainly wasn't a raw fooder, and because Cappy, my younger son, was going to her son's birthday party, she made the whole party raw vegan. So there are times when we can be really surprised by social, you know, events and how people respond to us. So I think socially, if we think it's going to be a challenge, we can almost bring that on. But if we open ourselves up to, what we're doing is rational, it's sane, and have love for other people, accept what other people are doing. If they're doing something different, then that can come back to us socially. And I've really have enjoyed my social reactions with people. I try not to judge them for what they eat, and hopefully they don't judge me for what I eat or what I've brought my children up on. And your second question about the cleansing,
Can I just comment on your first question? Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess people just responded in a quite a natural way to your confidence. It sounds like, you know, your trust and faith in what you were doing. But you personally, through 3 decades of a fruit diet, must have watched the transition as a societal, cultural collective shift drastically. I mean, just in the 20 years that I've been following it, it's been such dramatic shifts. I mean, now obviously we have fruit festivals for the past couple of years, so people's perceptions have definitely warmed up, and I'm sure you're very excited probably to see what will happen in the next 30 years with a fruitarian diet. And I think that's one thing that I also gained a lot of inspiration from your posts of all different weird and wonderful articles from the past century. I mean, I think you actually alerted me to the fact that South Africa had some of its own fruitarians. You know, Essie Honeyball was one of them. Yeah, I actually visited Morris Crock before he passed on. I visited him twice, which was very, very, very nice. Yeah. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, thanks. And I think I really do like looking at all these old newspaper articles, because there was such a support of fruit diets 150 years ago. Moving to the 1950s, there was such a support of fruit diets in mass media, not just fringe publications, from doctors, from all sorts of people. So there is a good sort of like solid history going back, you know, to the emergence of the natural hygiene movements in the late 19th century. But I think when your confidence is built on, it's got to be built on something. And when it's built on research and science, and really it's hard for other people to shake that, because I'm continually learning. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. And it's part of what I really enjoy is researching and reading. I've always got about 3 or 4 books on the go, always looking out for old newspaper clippings or old books on the fruit diet or old books on natural hygiene. So it's enjoyable for me to do that research, and then I, you know, try and share it a bit on social media as well, just because people do appreciate, you know, these old articles and these old pioneers who paved the way for us today, really. So yeah, but the second question about cleansing, and I think fruit is very cleansing. I think mono diets take it a step further for 2 reasons. One is that when we have a mono diet, our digestion really has a rest, and it is like a camouflaged fast in many ways. So we have more energy for working on healing within the body. And I think an additional thing is certain fruits can be quite aggressive in stirring up stored toxins. I think some fruits that are more gentle are papaya, apple, melon to some extent, but oranges for me are quite an aggressive cleanser. And when I've eliminated using orange juice, it's similar to elimination on a water fast, whereas the other fruits such as melon, papaya, even grapes, although they can be a bit more aggressive than some of the other fruits, I don't get that elimination. But I think if you want a fruit that is quite aggressive and can stir up old stored toxins or even new toxins that we've taken in from the environment, I think that oranges are a great cleanser, a great rebalancer of the body. So personally, if you have more deep-seated health issues, orange juice, as long as it agrees with you and you can access good quality ripe oranges, I think it's a very good fruit to mono on. So when we mono, we take it a step further. And for me, yes, it's important over the course of a year to get a variety of fruits. But within that year, it's also important to do 1 or 2 mono diets. And I find doing them really helps me thrive long term on a fruit diet, because it's like going to the garage for a tune-up or a top-up. And I think with the fruit diet, we are in control. If we don't want to eliminate so much, we eat more of the denser fruits. We eat maybe more bananas or more avocados or more jackfruit or more durian or more chempedak. If we want to heal and cleanse more, we go more for the juicy fruits such as oranges, grapes, melons. And those fruits are more cleansing and more healing in a way because they take less energy to digest, and also because the citrus fruits I feel actually help release certain toxins in the body. And what's interesting is if I do an orange juice mono diet, I will lose weight, even if I'm having quite a high level of calories. But if I do melons or papayas where I'm actually eating less in terms of calories, I will not lose weight. And I think part of that losing weight on an orange juice mono diet is because the toxins are released more with an orange juice diet. So I think in general, a fruit diet is cleansing. If we want to take that to another level without water fasting, and I think water fasting is very useful for many people depending on your circumstances, but if you want to do cleansing and rebalancing without water fast, then certainly mono diets can be helpful. And for me, orange juice is the more cleansing of all the mono diets that I've tried.
Yeah, and you'd be happy to know I did I think I've done only one 60-day OJ fast, and I experienced the same thing. It was quite aggressive in weight loss, but the cleansing was wonderful, and I was able to continue work at the same time. At the moment, I do a lot of juice fasting on or feasting, whatever you call it, on apple juice. I found that to be such an easy, cheap, low acidic, easily accessible, easy to juice fruit. So, and it's very, very tasty. I love apples. But funny enough, I don't like apples when they're in their whole form, only when they're juiced. Yeah, and if I could be allowed one more question. And one comment on a lot of discussion came up about, I think energy and also sugar spikes and that kind of stuff. I'm type 1 diabetic for the past 3 years. And I've noticed that, the more I go into, say, just whole fruits and a whole fruit diet, the easier and easier, to echo what you said earlier, the easier it is for me to medicate, because it's actually quite difficult when your blood sugar is unstable and you have to medicate with insulin a lot, because it's quite dangerous. And it's tricky. And it just becomes so much more manageable on a whole fruit diet. There's almost like a war going on between the high carb and the low carb, and fruit has been demonized. And I can say from my point of view as a diabetic that, I have to monitor my blood sugar quite intensely. And I've noticed definitely on a high fruit diet, even fruit juice, it becomes so much more easier to maintain my diabetes. So the question would be, though, I believe you recently married, or you've been married for a while, but how do you and your partner, is your partner fruitarian? I'm very interested in social dynamics. And obviously you've got the faith and commitment to not be shaken through the years. I mean, 29 years has proven it. But yeah, so maybe just a little bit more information about how you manage that on a very personal level with your partner. Yeah, if there's anything you would feel like you could share. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think that when we respect what somebody else does, then they tend to respect what we do. And when we listen to them and hear their concerns, then they hear our concerns. So I think communication is very important in any relationship, whether that's with your partner, whether it's with your children, whether it's with the people you work with. And when me and my partner got together, he was on a very conventional diet. And I never forced anything on him. And, I respected what he did, and he was very good, and he respected what I did. And he was very supportive. And I think that's the important thing. Somebody need not be on the same diet as you are, but if they're supportive and respectful of what you do, then that's very, very important. So he was always very respectful of my diet. He never ate animal products in front of me. And after a little while, he decided to go vegetarian purely for health reasons. And we said, oh, it's not about the animals or anything, it's health reasons. I never pushed anything on him. I never showed him really graphic animal rights videos or anything like that, because I realized that people have to go at their own pace and you can't force anything on anybody. They have to be ready. So he initially went vegetarian for health reasons. He had high cholesterol and was overweight a bit, and the doctors wanted to put him on cholesterol reducing, those statin drugs that can be very harmful to some people. But anyway, he went vegetarian, then he went vegan, and his cholesterol levels really went down to normal. He lost about 20 pounds or something, more than 20 pounds, and his health improved. And he then became aware of the ethical side of it and became very aware of animal suffering, which was, something that he hadn't really thought about before. And he does eat a lot more fruit, a lot of raw foods. He's vegan, but not completely raw vegan, but very supportive of what I do. And there was a period last year when we had loads of mangoes on our mango tree, and he was raw for about a week, eating mostly mangoes, and he just said he felt so fantastic. And it is something that he's working towards, eating more and more raw food. So I think very important in any relationship to be respectful of somebody else, and even if they're on a very different diet, and not to push things on anybody or not to judge people. And then we will kind of get that back in turn. They will not judge us, they will respect what we're doing. And and my partner thinks that the fruit diet is a really good and effective diet and would like to do it himself in the future, and he's kind of working towards that. So, that was been a really good experience in our relationship. And communication, I think, is really important in any relationship. And if you feel unheard or if you don't feel understood, to communicate with your partner or with anybody else and get your needs met while you're meeting their needs at the same time. So I think compassionate communication goes a long way towards social situations, towards relationships, and really can help us to not have conflicts or, challenging times in our relationships if we're on quite a different diet to other people.
Thank you, Anne. It's been such a pleasure to engage with you and hear all your wisdom. And if I can, last comment, I would like to say it sounds like you've developed quite a relationship with fruit trees, and your knowledge, your personal experience is extensive. I must say, I find that, I'm a permaculture practitioner, and my passion is food forests, and also healing relationships with the land, and I think our symbiotic relationship with fruit trees is one that's very interesting. So I must say that's a very, very interesting thing that's come across with the way you talk about fruit trees, is your actual relationship with fruit trees. Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I do really love and get excited about different types of fruit and growing fruit and learning more about how we can plant fruits and what fruits grow in different areas. And I think there's so many interesting types of fruit that grow in every single area. I think some of the temperate fruits are delicious if they're grown properly. A good quality apple can be as delicious as a mango. Just because you're in the tropics doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to eat better than someone in a more temperate climate. If you've got good quality apples, pears, there's so many lovely berries as well that grow in the colder areas, and berries are fantastic fruits in terms of calcium and other micronutrients and other minerals. So I think having that knowledge empowers us. When we grow our own foods, that empowers us as well. And yeah, I really like learning more and more about planting things. I love the symbiotic relationship. That's one of the things that gives me faith in this diet, because we have this wonderful symbiotic relationship. We get this food, we get this delicious, healthy food. As long as it's fruit that's designed for humans to eat and it's properly ripe, it's not toxic. It doesn't contain toxins like seeds do and like greens do. And it's given to us to eat. And in return, we plant the seeds. It's like a win-win situation, and it's beautiful. And that's how the earth needs to be. And I think what's happened is that humans can live in a more parasitic relationship with the planet, and we take and we take and we take, and we don't put enough back in. And when we have all these symbiotic relationships going on in the planet, the whole planet is healthy, and it's the health of the planet just increases. And that's really what we can do by planting fruit trees. And in terms of environment, if we have one mature fruit tree that we've planted, that offsets the carbon emissions of a car driven 26,000 miles. So just one fruit tree. So every fruit tree we plant will help the environment. And in terms of, somebody once said to me, I think you're selfish on a fruit diet because what about children who are starving in Africa? And in terms of feeding our world population, fruit is by far the most effective use of land. From a newspaper article that was written in 1906 that I have, it showed that an acre of bananas could feed 25 people. An acre of wheat could feed only one person, and an acre of potatoes could feed 2 people. So we can see that if we're talking about feeding the whole population of our planet, that fruit really is environmentally sound on many, many levels, as well as the trees taking in pollutants and giving out oxygen. They also produce the most amount of crops per acre of any type of food on the planet. So this whole symbiotic relationship, planting fruit trees, making sure there's plenty of fruit there for everybody in the world, I think that is just a lovely thing. And also the symbiotic relationship I talked about earlier between the fruit trees and the fungi. So the fruit trees give the fungi carbohydrates, and the fungi break down inorganic bonds between minerals so that the ions are freed up, so that the trees and the plants can absorb the calcium and other ions. So when we have a planet that runs on symbiosis, we have a healthy planet. And the trouble is, humans have got more into this parasitic relationship, but we can change. We can plant fruit trees. That's one thing we can do right now, plant fruit trees and help increase symbiosis, in the world.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to be planting a whole lot of fruit trees in the next 2 months, about 500 temperate fruit trees. So you've given me a lot of confidence and encouragement. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I just have a request. I feel we may have you again, because you have gone now 2 hours 39 minutes. So maybe we'll arrange for another one. Maybe after some few months, we'll get back to you.
Yes,
And
that would be lovely.
thank you. I don't know if there's anybody else who has something to say to Anne before we can wrap it up today. And if there's nobody else who has a question, we are going to, and maybe you will tell us on more about how to contact you, help you. We have already gotten your email, and
Yes,
if you have maybe programs like Rory has talked about, exactly.
Yeah, but if anybody has questions, they can always email me. I can send you a copy of my book, and and I'm on Facebook. So I do put a lot of posts on Facebook about fruit and information, anything I get that I think is really interesting. So I'm Anne Osborne on Facebook. You should be able to find me. And I think I've got maximum friends, but you can follow me to see posts and things that I post about fruit and information on growing fruit and historical evidence of fruitarianism and things like that.
Okay, so I'm going to post below the video, because you have the channel videos. So I'm going to post below the video your contact, that is the email, and also your Facebook. I'll just link it. There's a way I do it, so that people who will listen to it later will be able to find you. But for me, I'm really grateful. I'm very thankful for this opportunity, because you have revealed some things that I didn't know. And I know most of us have also learned so many new things. So we are very thankful, and we are going to find you another time. Hopefully, maybe after a month or 2. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye. See you.